vehicles that need to be taken care of, and I thought I'd be able to put everything together by the end of the day, but I couldn't make it by the end. But we're still going to do two Q&A sessions today and tomorrow, specifically about marriage to end the series. So prayerfully, you guys were ready, because we were supposed to have this stuff up yesterday. My apologies. I tried to make sure I was as upfront and honest with everybody as the situation that was going on, so y'all would know. So prayerfully, we'll be able to get this finished, so we can get back into our Exodus series, and we'll just stay there for a little bit. As far as I know, we're gonna have to get ready for the holy days coming up too. So come the beginning of September, the teaching's gonna change a little bit again, because we got Feast of Trumpets on the 11th, Day of Atonement on the 20th, and then Feast of Unleavened Bread starts on the 25th, all in September. So we got a lot of stuff coming on. But anyways, my apologies about today. I was trying to put in different platforms and stuff that we were running behind, so prayerfully it worked out where you guys got some kind of notice that we would be on today and that we still would be doing what we do. We messed up a lot on time already, so we're going to jump right into it. So I got everything here ready to go, just about. Trying to get the last platform up and going. And of course it's not working. So it is what it is, but pretty much we're going to go ahead and go. I can't wait any longer. So we're going to get ready to go. Only thing that I still got to make sure I go get is some water and pour that so I have something to drink. It is extremely hot. It's been extremely hot. It's been, and where I've been, it's been in the 90s every single day. And I've been out pretty much in the RV or outside, primarily pretty much all day, every day, except for a couple hours here or there. So I'm not gonna hold you. It has been a little crazy over here. Perfectly, y'all been doing okay. Been trying my best to not overheat, even though I've had a couple spells where my body was definitely on the borderline. But as we've been talking about marriage, so I'm gonna get, well, let's go ahead and get ready to get started. I'm gonna grab my water and grab my water, grab my coffee and stuff, get my lemon ready, and then we're gonna go ahead and get started. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into this. And of course, it's time to get into this. We got all the sirens. It is what it is. So it's interesting too, because we get sirens. It's like another sign. It's a funny thing to me, because it's like I feel like once again, kind of a sign of something that's always happening in our community. It's like when we want to hear the sirens, we can't hear the sirens because we need the sirens to shut up. They can be heard. Okay, all right. Hopefully everybody's together. Thank you for allowing me. It's been rough trying to get started, but it is what it is. Thank you for being on. Appreciate you. Hopefully you got the warnings and everything that you know we're running a little bit late. It's about the best we're gonna do, signal-wise and everything today, by the way. So my apologies if the signal's not well. Prayerfully it's working well for you, and prayerfully you're able to hear me. All right, but let's go ahead and get started. Oh, and before we even, the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in Yahweh's sight. He is our strength and our Redeemer, and it is in His name, which is His authority, to pray, praise, proclaim, project, and protect today's message. Amen. Hola, mi nombre es Kofi, ¿cómo está? Bonjour, je m'appelle Kofi, ça va? Ni hao, namaste, osai, kitoya, ohio, merci, minute, guan, kapsa, kasamid, aloha, ciao, poisson, levet, havarihani, apuaba, nadase, etesen, Shambo, Nibidi Kofi, Nibafra, Kukutan, Wewe, Boker To, Boker Ta, Boker Kab, greetings, grand rising, salutations, good morning, Bakwata, Badakalat, Shamikama, and I, Provide, Khilit, to Christ, Mashin, Khay, Tida, Yahal Sha'al, and I provide Khilit, to Christ, Mashin, Khay, Tida, Sikisaik, Yahal Sha'al, Bakhat Shamayam, peace, brethren. I am Pastor Kofi, Pastor of the Christ, where we are always changing lives one man at a time, being the voice of the voiceless, and speaking the unspoken. We give our honor and praise to the Most High. We give praise and honor to Him for my wife, the honor who lives a life to say to be honored. Thank you for being on, babe. To the ministerial staff, moderators, SOC, everybody. We appreciate you. If you agree with us, disagree with us, whatever the case might be, thank you for being on. Once again, thanks, babe, for being on. And so so today is Q&A. We're supposed to have been doing two of these. One was supposed to be yesterday, and one was supposed to be today. So we'll just do one today and one tomorrow. Tomorrow I will try to be on a little early so we can go a little longer because at 10 a.m. New York time, we have our stuff. Hold on a second, you guys can pause. Oh, grief. What can happen? What's going to happen? Okay, all right, excuse me. So everybody should be back on. My apologies, hopefully everybody can hear and see me all right. So thank you everybody for being on, we appreciate you. We're gonna jump right in. It's supposed to be Q&A session of marriage for today. So prayerfully you guys are ready. And if you do ask other questions, comments, or concerns today, I will try to answer them, but I'm gonna bring it right back to marriage. And if we get it to where it doesn't seem like persons have actual questions about marriage, and I will start coming up with some things off the different lists that I've seen over time, and just a list that I've gotten from persons in personal, or one-on-one sessions, things like that, or even in marital sessions. So we're gonna go ahead and get into those things. But let's see. So prayerfully, you guys are ready to get started, and consider our Bible pledge. We are going to jump right in. So let's say shalom to everybody real quick, and then we'll jump right in to the Bible pledge. I think, sisters, you have your women's meeting tonight, and we should be on. Live session this evening. After that. And I guess we'll move the meeting. We were supposed to have a meeting for everybody last night, and I couldn't come back on, so I guess we'll do that meeting next week. And tomorrow is as Saturdays normally are, so it's the second Saturday. So moving according to what that is. Please stand, please, sir. All right, let's go ahead and get ready to get started. Once again, thank you everybody once again for being on with us, and prayerfully you'll enjoy and get something out of this and be able to have some questions answered. Let's say shalom to everybody. Once again, thank you for joining on any platform, whether you're watching live, later on, whatever the case might be. You agree with us, disagree with us. Know that once again, this is something that's governed by a particular person, a particular belief system, and we're not going to go away from our belief system. Does not mean we will not respect yours, but we think that respect, or we believe, we know that respect goes both ways. By the way, can I just do, this is not even, we're not even live session. Could I just teach something a little quick? This is something at the end of the very last live session I did right here, right outside here. There are a couple of brothers, there's been a few brothers and sisters that have been stopping since I've been back, and watching, listening, sometimes asking questions after I finish. And this is something that's been gaining traction for years, and it's, this is why you have to study etymology. I got somebody who stopped me and gave me a whole sermon, him and the door, gave me a whole sermon, ensuring that I understood. I need to recognize that I shouldn't believe anything. I should only know it. This is something that's really heavily Rastafari, heavy 5%ers. If you know about 5%ers, where they break off from, which is basically a piece of inner line and stuff. That's kind of gone in a certain direction. But I was told you need to know. You need to know something. And I was like, well, do you know what canal or to know means? And they were like, what you mean? I was like, what you know? They were like, yeah, it means that you know it. Like, you blah, blah, blah. To know it means to be able to identify. How we teach it is to be intimate with something to the point of identifying. So if you're not intimate with something, or at least intimate as far as even the knowledge of it, if you will, the etymology of it, the culture of it, etc., you can't really know it. I'm aware of sin, but I'm not trying to know sin. Because to know sin, I would have to actually engage in it. So I'm aware. I used to know sin. I used to have a relationship with sin. That now, when sin comes around, I try to kick it out as soon as possible, right? So I can't know sin unless I'm trying to have a relationship with it, right? So I'm not intimate with sin. Doesn't mean that sin may not come around. Doesn't mean that I might not sin, which is missing my every once in a while, but I don't know sin. My flesh would like to know sin. I don't know sin, I'm aware of sin, right, by definition. But if you believe, person said you shouldn't believe, you shouldn't have faith. Here's the word belief. Belief, or it used to be belavan, belevan, and then it became belefan, which is just basically interchangeable with the fuss sound and the bus sound. Two characters that are, in different cultures. They don't use the one culture use the one that use the fuss. So Balavan becomes Balafan, and if you listen, I think one is Middle English, the Balafan, or the Balaf. One of them is Middle English. I think it's the Balafan is Middle English, and the Balafan is Old English. But either way, if I'm wrong about it, just flip it. But either way, they're older English, older Germanic language, older Gallic language, Visigothic language, and both. This is what Balafan or Balavan both mean. They mean to believe. They mean to have faith, and they mean to be confident. And so I was talking to my son right after I had a conversation with these persons, and I asked them the same thing I asked them. I said, if you believe in something, so to believe in something means to have faith, to believe it, or even to be confident in it. And he didn't want to answer because he did my next question. Then my next question to him was, okay, so if you know something, you become more confident. And if you become more confident in something, do you know it? Right? Right? Or if you become more confident in something, does it cause you to know it? Or if you know something, does it cause you to have more confidence? So when you hear something like I have confidence, does that mean you have confidence because you know it? Right? Now, that's an over-exaggeration because there could be little cracks in that argument for sure. But I was ultimately trying to get the point across that if somebody is more confident in something, right, they begin to know it, right? If they know something more, they become more confident. That means to know something causes me to have greater belief. To have greater belief will cause me to know something, right? So, anyways, that's been a thing that's been bothering me for a little while. I guess I'm just sharing that with y'all, whatever, for whatever reason. But ultimately, like, you'll hear a person talk about that stuff quite a bit either way, right? And So if you hear somebody next time tell you, well, how come you know it or believe it and you don't know it? You can just tell them that if I know something, I believe it. If I believe something, I know it. Right? In essence, right? You don't have to give them all the mumbo jumbo. And if they don't believe you when you say it, that's all right. They don't have to. All right. Anyways, all right. Q&A session for real, for real. We're talking about marriage. Let's get into this. If you can rise your feet in reverence of the His word, please feel free to at this moment in time. We're going to get ready to say our Bible pledge. Let's say shalom to everybody real quick. How you doing? Love, peace. How you doing? Love, peace, blessings. How you doing, Sister Beck? How you doing, Sister Shirley? Yasquay, Taylor, Minister Real, Yasquay one. Oh, long time no talk to. Yasquay one, at least I feel like. Hopefully all has been well. How you doing, Matt? CT, April, Deborah, Sister Deborah. Once again, Elder Alma, thank you for being on there once again. I appreciate it. Alvis Wilkes, Rodney, AD, Sister Beth, Daybreak, Daliavish, Albert, Charles, Judith. If I miss anybody who's on or coming on, sorry, to my head, not to my heart. If you use Friday, go into Saturday as your Shabbat. Happy early Shabbat to you, whatever. We appreciate you. Hopefully all is well. So we're going to be doing Q&A. We've been talking about marriage for a little while. If you ask me another question outside of marriage, I'll dabble in it, but I'm going to bring it right back. How you doing, Brother Aaron? I see you. So just letting you know. Doesn't mean I will not answer, respond, or anything, but just letting you know. You know, if you ask me something about marriage or whatever, if it's not about marriage, I'm probably, going to bring it right back in, because that's what we're talking about for these. Well, this is day number 11, I guess, of the series, and day number 12 will be tomorrow. So the Q&A, everybody always talks about it. How we might not know certain things about the Bible in this regard, as far as how to look at things biblically concerning marriage, but just in general. So we try to make sure we do this Q&A so the person can ask questions, valid questions, specific questions, question belief, question confidence in things, question what does the scripture mean, question what is its origin of it, etc., etc. So here's the time. Anything that I said, anything I might have said throughout the series, it does not make sense. Because if you recall, we're going to come back together in this series. We're going to compare notes, right? And we're going to talk about things, and we're going to make sure we have a few more conversations that are going to turn into the official, hey, at SOC, if you're getting married, this is what we say. And anybody we teach from this point on, anybody who we teach from this point on, right? If you're going to say this is what we do, right? If you're coming from that perspective, it's going to be like a handwritten thing or a typed thing that you can share. I'm on. So we're going to make sure that we're ready to go. Prayerfully, all is ready. Everybody's ready to go. Thank you for being on once again. If there, well, I was going to say if there'd be nothing else. I have nothing else. So let us go ahead and get ready to get started. Okay, hold on. How you doing, Brother Cole? All right, so we can go ahead and get started. All praise to the Most High. Yeah. So whatever questions, comments, or concerns, and some things that I've said or done or taught or whatever, and prayerfully I haven't being gone crazy or made anybody feel ashamed or put anybody out there. I've just been trying to, to make sure that we go back to the beginning of things, to the origin of it. So I hope nobody's been, I can see how some of the stuff that was taught, I guess, could affect somebody, make somebody think way off of what it is, or not way off, but maybe even coming at somebody. This could be something that if it's not done carefully, it could become off maybe as accusatory or attack mode. That is not my intention. My intention is just to give us truth from its origin. And all of us have fallen short in this in some way, shape, or form, because there's not a person on here more than likely who was raised in this, and if they were, who executed this without any type of failure, right? Any type of sin, if you will. Okay, I see you, Sister April. We're coming to you first. So we're going to go ahead and say our Bible pledge real quick. Once again, if you can rise your feet, represent the His word, and repeat after me real quick, and let's get started. This is my Bible. This is my sword. And this will I trust. For Yahshua is Lord. No sword of God shall ever be heard. For this is my Bible, and this is Yah's word. Hashem Yechava, Amam. Yechava Shem. His name is authority that will be done unto us. You may be seated to go back to what you're doing in the presence of the Most High. Okay, George Pierre, that's your way of saying hello? Or are you able to say hello? Okay. No, you can't remarry only by death. Can they be, or if they get caught in the act? So, okay, let's do this first. If a man of Israel, let me ask the question first. So, if a man of Israel is married to a non-Israelite woman whom is not equally yoked, can he divorce her? So I'm going to answer this because we've been talking about this now for a little while, so we've been talking about from a lawful perspective. So if things were lawfully done, first and foremost, a man of Israel, right, cannot marry a non-Israelite woman. Now somebody would say, but what about we went over rules? And what about this? No, hear what I'm saying. But what about King Solomon? King Solomon was out of order. Right? Lawfully speaking, a man of Israel is not to marry a woman who's not of Israel. A woman of Israel is not to marry a man who's not of Israel. Straight up. If we're going to say it correctly, we're going to do it correct. Right? That's how it's supposed to be. Now, I understand what somebody's talking about. But hear what I'm saying. I need you to catch this. Right? You said if a man of Israel is married to a non-Israelite woman, the only way that should even become a thing is that you have a man who is not of Israel, a woman who is not of Israel. They have been married. You say Moses, well, okay, even if we're talking about Moses. So this is why we're talking about kingdom, nationality, hashtag we could nation, things of that nature, right? If we're going to talk about Moses and we're going to talk about those things or whatever, his wife Zipporah, right, has a priest for a father. Now, the person's only talking about nationality. I'm not talking about what you guys are talking about as far as just flesh on it, which might be part of the problem, and so maybe we have to explain that, but I don't have as much time to explain as I normally would. This is a Q&A session. We might have a bunch of things. I'm talking about nationality, not what you just think about race only, right? Or what you think of as race, right? I'm talking about nationality, right? Moses, when he became part of their family, became part of a family where Zipporah's father is Jethro, right? Is he what? He's a priest, right? So if he's a priest, what is he considered to be? If he's a priest of Yah, now if he's a priest of something else, it's different. But his father-in-law is what? Is a priest. So he got married into the priesthood. Moses is not even raised as an Israelite. He was raised knowing he's an Israelite low-key because he knew his mom, right? He knew his sister, which might mean he knew about a brother and stuff, right? Then he's adopted in officially after a while. Well, he was adopted in officially, but he's then taken over and stuff, and he's raised as being committed, but he low-key knows the whole time that he's Israelite. This is not something that, unlike movies and stuff, that he was unaware of, right? But he's not even raised as Israel. He's raised as Kemet. He has a moment in time to where he can't take it anymore. He moves too fast, realizing there's a calling on his life. He moves too fast off somebody. If they find out about it, at least he knows some of the Israelites know about it. He goes on the run, right? There's some other things that actually happened within those 40 years, but that takes me to a whole other thing of explaining outside of 66 books. Long story short, he has 40 years of Kemet. He has 40 years, right? And this is his wife and all these other things, whatever, right? He marries into his wife's family. Jethro was a priest. It's the same thing as persons don't catch this. It's the same thing as when Abraham gave a time. Now, there's no Israel at this moment. That being said, Abraham gives a time. He gives a time to a Canaanite, but the Canaanite is a priest, right? Melchizedek, or as we call today, Melchizedek, right? Melchizedek is a priest. When he gave a time to Melchizedek, he's given a down payment for where Israel will be. Melchizedek is a priest of the Most High, which means he's part of the same nation, right? What about Balaam doctrine, which we learned about in Numbers 22, 23, 24. We're warned about in Revelation chapter 2, verse 14. Balaam was a prophet. He was not an Israelite, but he was a prophet. So when the prophet went against Yah, or was even thinking about going against Yah and the children of Israel, and helped come up with a thing to be a stumbling block before the children of Israel, right? That was it was a betrayal, because he's got to be a traitor if he's trading information that can hurt us, and he considered priest of the Most High, then he considered to be us. He's been grafted in, if you will, if you want to bring Romans chapter 11 into that conversation. I'm not just talking about Israel from only the flesh, because there's a lot of Israelites who are Israel by the flesh, but would never live what Israel is supposed to live by the law. This is why even when Paul speaks about the law, Paul never talks about the law the way we think. Paul talks about the law from two perspectives. Either it's the law of the spirit or the law of sin. The law of sin is if somebody within their own flesh reads the law and says, I'm going to take it and make it what I want it to be. I'm going to decide what the law means, rather than saying, this is what Yah said from the beginning of what Moses said, right? So we're not going to leave it where it was in its origin, and we're going to have a problem. So this thing of this, and Moses married into the kingdom when he married into Zipporah. Remember, Zipporah is the one who circumcised him. Right? Moses didn't know everything when he went over there. Moses knew he was an Israelite. Moses had all this, but Moses didn't know it was his wife who circumcised him. He said, I will not have, right? Circumcise the child. He said, I won't have a bloody husband. So how you going to go to the children of Israel to have them the circumcised one? You're dealing with also circumcision of the heart. You're dealing with trying to get them to lead 3 days journey, 60 miles to be able to go and worship, and yet you yourself, right, don't have the law in your own house. I'm not going to have you or my son or anybody die because you're not living by the law yourself. Right? So we have to deal with that from the beginning. So from the beginning, the issue, and a lot of times we're trying to always do what do we call that? I don't know. Forgive me. This should be an easy one for me to be able to get. We're always trying to control or not quality control, not pest control, but you know what I'm saying, like after something blows up or something is terrible, now we're trying our best to try and figure out how do we pick up the pieces. But first things first, that we would keep the law, right? Like if we just keep it 100, and thank y'all for the shares, thank you for the likes, appreciate you, right? Damage control, thank you. It was escaping me. I appreciate that. Right? How you doing, Southside? If we were to be 100, keep it 100. First things first, instead of worrying about damage control, let's not cause the damage. The only way that there should be a non-Israelite man with an Israelite woman or a non-Israelite woman with an Israelite man is this, is that two persons who are non-Israel, whether in belief, graft in, nationality, flesh, whatever, if it was perfect, is that basically these persons would both have gotten together not believing in the word of Yah. By the way, it happens, it's acceptable, it's cool, we're not mad at that, right? It doesn't really have much to do with Israel. That being said, one of the persons may come into the knowledge of who the Most High is, or come into connection with Israelites and such, and realize, oh, okay, there's this, there's that, and blah, blah. Maybe I believe some of these things, etc. They become, over time, Israel. But you're still married to somebody who is not, right? When that happens, what does the Bible tell us to do about that? The Bible tells us clearly that we still have an obligation to that spouse. Right? That you can't just go, I promise you, I gave you a vow, and now that I'm in the law, somehow, some way that negates my vow. No. See, I talk about this all the time. There will be persons who will say stuff like, it's like the whole lawless thing. The New Testament means that we don't have to obey the law. I'll try to see if I can talk about that gospel one today. It's supposed to be Q&A specifically on marriage, but if I can find a way to tie or go into it or something like that, I promise I'll try to get there. Just today's going to be focused on marriage. That's what we're not going to do. But if I may just, it's like when you have persons that will be like, oh, the New Testament, Christ died so we don't have to obey the law. And I'm like, no, actually, you should be more lawful because you have every opportunity. Matter of fact, you have more opportunity to flex your position or to do things and not be as afraid, because Christ has shown that if you go to the highest of heights and he wasn't there with you, or I won't even say that. If you go to the highest of heights but you happen to sin or something like that, that Christ has shown that he'll still cover your sin. Meaning this, right? I've used this before as a parable, if you will. It's not exactly a parable, but I've used this before as an analogy, whatever we like to call it. And in this idiom, no problem, Jasper, I just want to let you know I wasn't ignoring you, that's all. And so I've used this before. when you had the law by itself, right? Because we had the Holy Spirit, we had grace, which was the presence of God, all that around us with Adam. Adam, which is Adam, I as when they both decide that they're going to sin. Every child that comes out of from that point on is walking a tightrope. The law itself is a tightrope. It is. It's very straightforward. There's not much, like, yeah, we don't have much way of, I know a lot of persons want to be able to jump and do all types of stuff and hit the, and on them folk and all that stuff. No, we got a very, you're right, we have a very tight rope. And before Christ came and before Holy Spirit could then be left with us, and before we had Christ's sacrifice, well, not even before, it still is, but person don't know, like when it comes to laying out a sacrifice, the sacrifice always was about being in a position where you must know, you must recognize, how you doing, Barry? You must recognize that whenever a sacrifice, whenever the altar was set up and you put a sacrifice on, the sacrifice is not your sin. The sacrifice is a replacement of your sin. The sacrifice has to be innocent of your sin, right? Because that sacrifice has to be able to take on what you didn't do. So you don't put on the sacrifice, a human for your human sin, because you both have human sins. But you find an animal, and you find animals specifically that are considered to be pure concerning your sin, right? So you would put on, anyways, I don't want to go too deep into that, but long story short, you put on an animal to be sacrificed. You put that animal to be sacrificed. That animal is innocent of your sin. Y'all y'all has to receive blood. Right, blood must be spilled for every sin that we have. So y'all can receive the blood, but that blood ultimately is not great enough because none of those animals are on your level. There's no human being that can die for you because all human beings are full of sin, unless we talk about a human being that becomes the second Adam. So only a human being not born of what we would consider to be a natural born citizen, right? Born, coming from the seed of the Most High, right? Being able to be in the body of a human being. And this human being having a wife, just like the first one did, except this one's wife is the one that he's dying for, rather than the first one who had a wife and he threw her under the bus. And they blame the Most High for her rather than protecting her and correcting her and cherishing her, right? And so, yeah, how you doing, brother? Yes, it takes great faith, right? So this second sacrifice, or this second Adam comes. He's and the first Adam who would not live for us, right, and therefore protect his wife, cause to go to death. The second one is willing to die for us, which allows us to have eternal life. And so, because of that sacrifice, right, we're talking about a whole different thing, right? Because of that sacrifice, you got to realize that now we have this safety net. Christ's sacrifice gives us a safety net to where there's like certain things that we couldn't be saved from. No matter what sacrifice happened, there's just not enough animals. There's not enough ceremonies. There's not enough whatever. Even if the Most High put them there themselves, there's not enough to keep you to get you to a place where you deserve anything other than Sha'am, shield, hell, right? But there's a second sacrifice that comes that now says, okay, your sins can be forgiven as far as the east is from the west, right? Because of something that's on a human level, greater than us, but on the human level, the same human level that we are, was able to do what was asked of us and is asked of us still. There's the same Messiah who we would say, he doesn't care if you sin or not, right? Which is ultimately what a lot of lawless stuff is, because you can't determine sin if you don't say, hey, this is lawless or not. With that being said, he's the same one that says, be ye perfect as your Father in heaven also is perfect. So if you're talking about perfection, you live by the word is also the law is also the doctrine is also the instruction is also the Torah. It's the same words, right? So if you're living by these things, constantly consistently, right, then you have the ability to walk more in your faith. You have the ability now to say, oh, okay, I might be afraid before Christ to do certain things. And by the way, we did great things too. But I might be afraid before Christ to speak this in his name, or to use my gift in his name, or to be able to go to the community in his name, or to make sure I do blah, blah. I might have been even a little afraid because, hey, I was walking the tightrope. Now I still walk the same tightrope, But now the tightrope has a net under it. So before, you afraid. You making sure. Now, you sitting up there and doing the new running man. They don't know about the old running man. But you doing all types of dances on the same tightrope because you comprehend, you understand, that now he got you like that. When he got you when you understand the level of how of godness, when we say he got you, when you understand how much your husband really got you to the point to where he died and was resurrected, left you a comforter, building the mansion, and has set up everything for perfection, so that all you got to do is basically be protected and be prepared for him, so that he can bring you to the prepared place to live eternally, and you straight. Right? It's another level you should be willing to go into. It's another level of faith. It's another level of honor and respect, right? So a lot of persons don't go far enough into it because they still live by this thing. If there is a so-called, there really is no such thing as Old and New Testament, but if we want to use those terms, if there is an Old Testament thing, you should actually be more into the law and more following things now than you used to. So when somebody gets married to somebody, they both were lawless, they both were inside the kingdom, and now one of you is married inside the kingdom. Instead of us, and how you doing, Sir Kingdom? Thank you all for the love. And I'm sorry, Chair, I miss you. I need to stand it. Yeah, holistic. Come on. So now that we get, so you got to comprehend now that if this is, in fact, the standard, right? If this has been the standard, and now the standard has more protection because of the sacrifice that's been given, but in all of our marriages, should be protected like that. And by the way, it's Q&A session today on marriage part 1. We'll do part 2 Q&A session tomorrow. So prayerfully everybody be able to join us. I know the persons might not even be on because they didn't see me on top of all that stuff. And I said then I was going to be on at 8:30, and then I don't think we actually started till 8:40. So prayerfully persons will be able to go back and watch this. But we're using this to answer questions, especially since we've been talking about marriage. This is the 11th day straight we were talking about marriage. So prayerfully, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, let us know. How you doing, Nish? But to all of you, whether you watch this live or watch this later on, it is my great pleasure to be in front of you one more again. Thank you for your likes, shares, subscriptions, hit the notification tab. If you'd like to be, thank you for the viewership, the gifts that God's given you that you use in front of the scenes, behind the scenes, as well as your time, talent, effort, energy to become great husbands and wives. Become great spiritual wives of the Most High, become part of the body of Christ that is married unto Him. All those great things. I appreciate you all, and I thank you so all. Even for those of you who give, donations that help us as far as tithes, offering, and even just donations to help us with things we cannot do, what we do worldwide without the help and support of such persons as yourselves. Thank you again. So today we're focusing in on Q&A. On marriage, and so so that's kind of the perfect way of looking at it. That's the only way it should happen. And if you have two persons and one person becomes in the word, then we can have a conversation. But if you have two persons who are married, let's say you have two persons that are married and one person loses their faith, so the same thing, right? The law has us be more bold and say, I'm gonna hold on to it more. Right, we should look for every reason to make the marriage work. Ultimately, there are things that break the contract. Ultimately, there are things that we have to use to protect ourselves and protect those people who are there. So ultimately, there's things that I might see that I, as a pastor, have to step out and be like, hey, bro, you might not want to stay around it. That's abuse. Or hey, sis, you might not want to stay around it. That's abuse. Right? There are things that there are safeguards because there is sin. Unfortunately, there are persons who will not do what they're supposed to do, and we have to be honest about those portions. That being said, we have the law to hold us accountable, and we try to do everything according to the law. The standard is not how we feel from day to day. The standard is not compared to what everybody's relationship is set up like. The standard is not. The standard is not what everybody else would like us to do. The standard is what Yehovah has called us to do. That's the standard, right? So that's what we're teaching is the standard. If there is something like that, we can talk about those things. But really, we're trying to reestablish standard. We made a safe place. We were talking about our nationality, we're the nation, and within that nationality, right, within the kingdom, within this prison, comes a standard. Right, going to. So we have to keep it. To keep it is the guard. To keep it is to watch. To keep it is to focus in on it. And this is one of the things that we do not really want to have those conversations in, because that means somebody also has a right to be able to look at you. You know, somebody has a right to look at us and say, you know, what's up with your standard or lack thereof? Because we're the standard, right? Paul said, "I speak a great mystery." And by the way, today's Q&A session, we're focusing in on marriage, so feel free to focus in with us. Paul said, I speak to you about a great mystery, right? He said, when I talk about marriage, but he said, I'm just telling you that the mystery, because remember, mystery is just anything that wants to be revealed. He said, the mystery is that your marriage is that husbands should be focused on trying to be like Christ and represent him, and wives should be focused on trying to be like Israel and represent him. I'm sorry, Sister Luana. All I see is in purpose of legal matters. Did you say something before that? Because I know sometimes we blocking your stuff. Or what was I talking about in that part as far as purpose of legal matters? I'm sorry. All I saw was in purpose of legal matters. You know they be messing stuff up on here. Oh, you sent the message. Okay. Hold on. You put it in a thing or you put it in a text? Because I don't have a text. If it's a DM, I can't look at the DM right now. My apologies. Is it a text message? Because I can't find it. Even though, to be fair, I can't look for it right now either. Was it a text message, Sister Luana? Is it an email message or an email? I might be able to look it up. If I had myself together, I'd have it set up where I could look at it on another device. But of course I don't. Legal purposes as well, as far as divorce? I don't know. I'm sorry. You said you sent a message before this. Was it a text message? I don't know where. I'm having a problem finding it. How you doing, Coop Devil? Are we talking about if somebody is trying to get a divorce, or how are we supposed to get married as far as legal purposes? Because we did talk about that within the series, but I'm not sure where to start. I'm sorry. I'll look again in a second. And how you doing, Sister Donna? Today we're focused on marriages. I think Yasper one had a question about beards. I don't recall exactly what it was. We're focusing on marriages today. So if you do ask a question about something else, I probably will not be focused in on it, or if I can't bring it back to biblically what we're supposed to be talking about, then was there Leviticus 19:27 I'm pretty familiar with. I just don't want to come off the dome because I could, yeah. So ye shall not round the corners of your heads, neither shalt thou mar the corners of thy beard. So the question that you had about that is basically saying, yeah, like, you know, pretty much like you shouldn't really be shaping anything up, you know, or putting a blade to his period, like, and that's for particular. That's not necessarily for everybody who's an Israelite, but if you have certain things that either your family does, depending on your family lineage, or depending on the different vows you make, or, you know, if you're going to do it in that regard, yeah, we, you know, we wouldn't have put any razor to our head if you wanted to worship the family. How you doing, Bruder Richard? Thank you for the love. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm gonna look for the message one more again. While I'm doing this, if you guys have questions, comments, or concerns, how you doing, Judgment? Well, if you do have questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to put them out there. I will get to you as best as I can, as quickly as I can. I think I missed love, peace, blessings earlier. Sorry, does that apply to those who cleave? I don't understand. Can you help me out? When you say does that apply to those who cleave, I'm not sure where that question was asked. So I cannot answer it properly. If you're talking about yeah, I'm not sure where I was talking about. Sometimes this platform too is a little slow. So like I'll get it like a minute, 2 minutes after I say something, so I could be way on to something else. I'm trying to figure out, does that apply to those who cleave? If you can tell me which part I was talking about when you asked that question, then I can get back to you. If you can help me out with that. Other than that, I probably have to watch the recording and try to catch, and that's not even guaranteed, but try to catch when you actually put that when it pops up, and then I can try and get to it. But yeah, so let's see. Okay, my apologies. It looks like it's blocking what you're saying, Sister Lavana, or whatever, so I don't know what's going on. Because all it's just telling me is legal purposes. So we're talking about legal purposes as far as just getting married. Um, I don't know where to go, so I'm going to be broad. I'm probably not answering your question. It says you sent a message. I looked through on my phone real quick. I couldn't find any. I'm even trying to look through Gmail stuff just to make sure, in case I missed it there. If it's on another platform, I'm not sure how well I can look for it right now. Mm, yeah, but if we're talking about, so I'm gonna just take a. I don't necessarily want to do this, but I'm gonna take a stab in the dark, so to speak. Uh, on this, I'm gonna just try. Uh, I'm looking even on Messenger to see if I got anything coming through. It doesn't have anything. So I apologize. I don't know what's going on with that. I might have something going on my end with my messages. But long story short, so we're talking about some legal purposes in general, like and for what I've discussed, especially we're talking about focusing in on who should be there and things of that nature, as far as being Israel legally. So we're talking about nationality. One, one of the things, if we just keep it above, one of the things that I think, not I think, I know, we don't talk about being a nation, we talk about being lawful. One of the things that has to happen is you have to actually, so I'm going to talk about a bunch of different things. Hopefully I'm going to hit somewhere in the ballpark, right? Um, if you're going to be Israel, and once again, I'm still waiting. I don't know if you're still on love, peace, blessings. If you are, if you can tell me when you said, does that apply to those who cleave? Can you tell me what you were talking, what you were questioning? Because I didn't catch it when you wrote that question. So, uh, so I can try to answer your question as well to the best of my ability. However, if we talk about anything legal, first things first, this also goes to talking about becoming a nation. This is stuff that has to happen with a nationality. Because you have to understand, most of your marriages, if not all of your marriages, there are a couple persons who are a couple couples at SOC, a few couples at SOC, I guess, at this point, that we can say, hey, we married you differently. Some of you still didn't necessarily do all the stuff that you were supposed to. The paperwork stuff, right? But as far as your marriage, your marriage is, most of what we're talking about is you got to be private, which means first things first, you have to say that your entity, your institution, or what institution you're joining, how you're being institutionalized is not part of the institution that is worldly, right? If that makes sense, right? Your institution, excuse me, your marriage does not belong to the system. It does not belong to the world. That has to be one of the first things up. First things first, without a shadow of a doubt. If it isn't that, we already got a problem. We already have an issue. First things first, your marriage, your institution does not belong to the world. So we already have to have, like I said, I'm going to start from a perfect place. Even talking about how do we talk about this perfection of the modern situation, no problem, right? Fair is fair. We should speak on those things. And my apologies, seems like we're having signal issues. So thank you guys for sticking with us today. This is it's not our issue. it's a TikTok issue. So when they start doing that to us, I can't do anything but try to stay on track. But yeah, when you're speaking on you're speaking on your marriage, right? You have to understand this. When you're speaking on your marriage, when you're speaking on these different things or whatever, your marriage a lot of times belongs to a different state. It's not even the institution that Yah wants. It's a different entity, right? Like a corporation is an entity. If your marriage belongs to the entity, then your marriage, two becoming one, you and your wife, you and your husband, you all have become one, and you as one belong to the corporation. If you belong to somebody else, then you're a slave, right? So your marriage is not really designed to last in a way that's separate from what the institution of the United States or what the United States is instituted for you. So it's really difficult because in order for us to really start seeing this stuff take place, so much more stuff that we do has to be private, right? So much stuff like where our money goes has to be private, where our children go to school has to be private, and we'll pay for private institutions to teach our children not about themselves, but basically, and they'll say, oh yeah, we're the best and blah, blah, and we'll get you there. And there's certain things like okay, Holy Spirit, I do it. See, what it sounds like, I'm be honest, when I'm speaking like this, I do not even believe most persons hear marriage. I think you guys are hearing me speak about different issues, but marriage is the beginning, it's an institution. All these things come out of marriage. So how your children think, how your children are trained, what belief system that they have, the language that they're going to speak, the language that they're going to give to the next generation, the way that their mother and father treat them, all these things that comes from marriage, right? Do you know, even if we just talk about church, do you know the statistics show? I don't know yet because I don't know if we've done it, and I don't know who's actually doing so. Maybe we need to start doing this amongst ourselves and taking, and start writing this stuff out. Maybe we do. Where we need to start asking, how many persons do this? How many persons do that? Maybe we need to send out a whole thing and get an actual percentage and be like, oh, okay, this is what we deal with. And within people who are striving to be like us. But I don't, for the church, it's something crazy like let's say the mother and father, neither one goes to church. It's something like and the child goes to church when they're young. Something like a 10% chance, 10 to 15% chance the baby will continue to go to church when they become an adult. Let's say mama goes to church only, right? It jumps up a lot. I forget what the percentage is. I think something still like maybe there's like a 60-something% chance that baby boy that we're going to keep going to the church, right? If daddy goes to church, I believe it jumps up to something like it's like in the 80-90%. I want to say 90, but since I don't have it in front of me, I'll be safe. Let's say 80 to 90% chance that baby boy and baby girl is going to still go to church, right? I'm saying all these things to say that a united family structure, right, in any system that you're trying to build, if you want to talk about biblical, if you want to talk about in the world, if you have fathers and mothers in the homes, it's more likely that the child is not going to end up going to jail, right? A lot of different things we could talk about. We have to have a structure, and our structure is to be there. So we're talking about legally. First things first, legally, we have to like break a lot of things away from the system. Our marriages are so systemic and systematic. We depend on the system for so many things that we can't have an opportunity to get out of marriage what Yah created. What we do is we get out of marriage stuff and we're looking for the state to give, whatever the state can provide. Like we don't set things aside, right? We don't set things aside. No government, no way of governance happens without provision. And a lot of persons forget that provision. A lot of us think that provision. Oh yeah, somebody just comes by and gives you that. It's very rare that somebody just steps in and says, "Hey, I see what you're doing. I'm gonna give you $10 million. Make it happen. Don't worry about giving me anything back." I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just here to tell you it's very rare, right? That somebody wants something for what they get. And by the way, they should. It's their money. You should be careful who's giving it to you, so you can make sure you're aware of what they're asking you for. But they should. If somebody gives you their money, they should be able to say, "Hey, I want a return on my investment." So you need to learn about your investor and not just be so much worried about the money. That's what happens now is we don't care who invests in us, and then they start expecting return back. We can't give it to them, and then they start taking stuff away and they start putting us in prison, right? But oftentimes what happens with vision is we forget that provision a lot of times is set aside. Right? That's what the tithe is. Tithe is not, oh yeah, give 10% to that blah blah. Tithe is set aside. Like person don't catch. The tithe is set aside so that when we do need, but most persons don't tithe, they go to assemblies and they give you all these scriptures to tell you why they don't need a tithe, and then they'll say, well, blah blah. And a lot of persons, not all, but a lot of persons, right, will even be persons who have money. So they'll say, well, I don't need tithe, I don't need blah blah. And then they'll be like, well, I don't understand. Why can't you guys do? Why can't you blah blah? Well, you have, but you don't provide. You say, no, but I give them when it's every once in a while I get blah blah, but you don't provide, you don't set aside. So how do you become a nation when you don't set aside? And we have weird philosophy on this. We go, well, we tried to do before, and it doesn't. By the way, just because we tried to do something before with the Tulsas and the Philadelphias, and Philadelphia wasn't the greatest example, but we'll put that in there. Philadelphia, Wilmington probably could have ended up different if we had decided to be ready to fight different than what we did. But nevertheless, we've obviously Rosewoods, there's a lot of places like that, but just because the enemy has done things to those places doesn't mean we should give up. It doesn't mean that we should stop, right? Even that group that just bought that, those however many families that bought all those acres of land, and they lost it, but they lost it because they didn't set anything aside. They didn't even really work together once they got there, and they didn't make sure they opened it up to community. They just wanted stuff for themselves, for those families, and then when it was too much, and they didn't have to stuff together lawfully, legally, privately, etc., so you get in trouble, right? We're not working together to become a nationality and set aside. So first and foremost, it's difficult to have this conversation a lot about marriage because our marriages are not attached to something private from the state. I'm telling you about doing something that's private from the state. And it's difficult to have a conversation about it. Right? It's difficult to have a conversation about it. Because I'm telling you about something that's private from the state. Right? I'm telling you about something that's private. Like really, I'm telling you something like what y'all want to be has no business being in the United States corporation. Or has no business being other. And eventually at some point what y'all want your marriage to be will have no business having any business. Like for the most part, in the United States or up. Right? So your marriage is a good, right? I hope I'm not rambling, but like I said, if somebody needs me to stop and break down what I'm saying, if you think I'm rambling, and I'm not even trying to say whatever, I'm saying like, seriously, like structurally help me. You said regarding lawful marriage between two Israel, the standard Abraham was given. Well, what I'm saying is about nationality. So Israel, once again, is when we get an official name on everything, but Israel, we're still considered to be children of Abraham, right? And Abraham, you know, was a child of the Most High, and so was Melchizedek. Neither one is Israelite, no Israelite yet, but it's still part of the same nation. Abraham's just as much part of the children of Israel as Salah was, or as Hebrew was, or as Adam was, or as Seth was, or as Mahalalel was, or as, you see what I'm saying? Like, they don't have to be Israelites to be children of the Most High, because there was no standard for that yet at that point. But even after that, now that we know who Israel is supposed to be the head of the concern. So there's a name for it now, and it's a particular nation that was born to make sure that they take on these laws and commandments and principles. There is no mistake or there is no blah blah, but all of them were persons who were married to the Most High, right? All of them were his wife, all of them were part of the body, all of them have an opportunity to receive heaven through the same sacrifice, right? So that's more so what I was talking about. Prayerful, that makes sense. So I'm just trying to say we're not, and that being said, even with that, we don't have the thought process of building a nation, having a nationality, having a way that we see things, saying this is the way that we believe, this is what our school system is. You know, we're still treating as Hebrew Israelites, not talking about just SOC, even though you can include us in this conversation because we are. We as a people, as a nation, the people, are still fighting for how many crumbs we can have from the master's table as if the master is Christ. You know, we're fighting for crumbs from the wrong table. Right? We're fighting for crumbs from the wrong table. We're fighting, hey man, who can get the most views? Hey man, how can blah blah? Like, we don't work together. It's interesting. You know, like I see it. We'll have a bunch of us, you know, and I'm trying to get better at going on other platforms again. It's just, you know, it's difficult. I'm trying to get my schedule back and be able to formulate things again. And I've been somewhat successful recently. Unfortunately, you know, that now TikTok is doing great work. It really like dwindling things down or whatever. Thank you all for being on, because if it wasn't for you guys coming on, I know persons are seeing it, but it's definitely not. It's hard to find. Persons are even finding the recordings now on different places to record. And, you know, all types of stuff is working together. So, you know, but I think even on today, you know, I guess the signal's bad, and of course we had a late thing and all that stuff going on. But just saying, like, it's. We're not working together, but I've been trying my best, and I don't see us doing stuff where it's like, hey, so and so's on the live. So it's virtual currency, but it's currency nonetheless. So and so's on a live session. They're part of Israel. Why would I not go on there? And if my name can help out, if I stay on there long enough, if somebody else sees me on there, and that's 5 to 10 more persons on their thing, cool. You know, hey, if I happen to go somewhere and somebody doing something for their business, they say, Pastor Kofi, can you come speak at it? No problem. Like, as long as you know what I'm coming to do and blah, blah, and I'm going to tell you what I'm doing. You tell me what it is, that we're in agreement, and we're going to make sure that the Most High is given, you know, glory and stuff like that. Let's go ahead and do it. If you're putting the product out and you say, Pastor Kofi, I'm doing blah, blah, whatever, fine. Let's go ahead and do it. Let's do these things, whatever. We don't work together towards things as a nationality. We're still doing what we were doing before. That's right, it's for generations. We're still doing what we were doing before. You know, we're still fighting each other for the crumbs, for the wrong table. Right? We're still beating each other up over the street corner. And somebody would say, what does it have to do with marriage? Everything. Because even in our marriages, this is what happens in your marriage, is that the husband and the wife are beating each other for crumbs rather than being like, we could have a whole meal together. And we're beating. If you were to go to Deuteronomy chapter 28, and you were to start at verse 54, verses 54 and 55 is where it talks about husbands. Verse 56 it starts talking about the wives. In verses 54 and 55, it says that brothers realize that we're under siege. If you do not get the context, if the homiletical reference there is not some kind of beacon of light for you to be able to have an aha moment, it's telling you that basically when you're under siege, you cannot go in or out of your own city. It also means that the goal of being under siege. Sometimes you can find ways to get around it or at least survive it for a long time. But after a while, the goal of putting a group under siege rather than just outright fighting them, the goal is to make sure they cannot eat. Right? That's the main goal. If you put a place under siege, you're not going to be able to eat. And you need food to eat, right? So you got to go in a lot of places, right, who are under siege, you might have certain things in-house, but also you have things that are placed outside. So if somebody comes and they are basically taking your ability to feed your people. How you doing, Jose? So when you're under siege, you're not eating, right? Anything that you're getting outside of the city, from outside the city, you don't have. And so since you don't have access to it, you can't do normal things. And right, and the men, just like it talks about with Adam, where Adam was made outside of Eden, but then was placed in the garden, right? Woman was placed in the garden, right? And it was made in the garden. How you doing? Yeah, amen. How you doing, Jose? So you're seeing this thing of siege warfare, where the men get messed up and they can't go out, they can't protect, they can't do anything, they can't provide, right? And so when this happens, it says that the men in the marriage it says that the men of Israel, when we're under siege, guess what's the first thing that we do? What do you think the first thing that men of Israel, that men in general, will do when their people are under siege? When their people are feeling pressure. You're starting to see it now with racist white supremacists. So where for the first time they're starting to feel pressure, right? And and people who thought that white was a real thing, right? That there was actually a group called white. And they're starting to realize that no, y'all were being used and abused, and y'all had crack up and down your streets and stuff too. So now we're starting to see that you're used and abused and things of that nature, right? And they're saying, but what happens to a man when he's under siege? What do you think happens? And I know we have like very little folk on today. That's all right. If there's anybody y'all can, well, I guess if there's a few folk, I guess I'll just go ahead and say it today. So a man under siege, it tells us that when the pressure builds up, his first response is not to even be mad at this woman. Unlike what we've been taught, that's the first thing we do, that we hate our women, that we don't do anything for them, that we don't do anything to them, and blah, blah. No, that's not the first thing that we did, right? You know the first thing that we did? The first thing that we do, rather, it says that we, pretty much, it says that the first thing we do is fight each other. I want you to catch this, right? What am I talking about? As far as if we're talking about legal, what happens? See, if you're in a system designed to squeeze you, and every time you get out of order, all they have to do is put you in siege warfare. They use siege warfare against you. When the man cannot provide, and he's not even in a position to fight his oppressor, then he begins to fight his fellow brother. Salah. You hear me, beloved? You hear me? A man who is oppressed and feels like he can't defend himself against his oppressor. He cannot defend his wife against his oppressor. He cannot defend his child against his oppressor. He has to look his baby boy and his baby girl in the eye and say he loves them, but he cannot give them food. He's attacking his brother. You hear it all the time. You don't even think about it. You just be sitting up there, man, so and so over there, man, he always acting like blah blah. You just see little things like little glimpses. He always think his car better than everybody. He always out there shining his car. And then you hear little stuff, you be like, oh, that's so nice that so and so. You hear so and so did something for his wife, and he bought her some begonias for her. She could plant in her garden, blah blah. Yeah, he always doing stuff like, I mean, I get flowers for you and stuff, blah blah. Right? But that's not really. It's not against you yet. That's his brother in him. Right? That's where the fight is. The first, and that's the goal, is to get us to fight each other, to fight brother against brother. See, because if brother take brother out, why do you think it's in all the black on black crime they want to talk about? Let's talk about it the way because we know black crime is just proximity, right? But when there is crime against our young brothers, our sons, our nephews out there on the street corner, It's about being under siege, and there's only but so much money, and I gotta have this prestige. And how come you think you can be on my block? Don't nobody own the block, but how much? Because that's the only thing we got. How come you fresher than me, right? What's the dozen? It's the Jonan about. That comes from chattel slavery time. That comes from when we were on the plantation, and we were so messed up, and we were so, and so even the N word. When people say, "Oh no, we were saying Niger," we were saying Niger. No, that's not what's going on. They just be on the plantation. They'd be like, man, look at this ninja over here, blah blah. Because Massa called you ninja, so you called each other ninja. Because Massa called you ninja, then you make fun of each other. And actually, you make fun of each other at first because you were doing nothing more. A lot of persons don't. Just do your research. At first, we were doing this because we were trying to imitate Massa. A lot of persons don't know. You ever heard? I forget what it is. When it says that old saying where it says somebody takes the cake, for example, that's because black folk used to make fun of white folk when they were dancing. Right? The slaves, ninjas, was out there making fun of Massa and them when they were dancing. And Massa and them didn't know that we were making fun of them. So they would bring us inside and they would have us do these weird dances, but they didn't know we was making fun of them. And so they bring us inside to make these dances. And so we were like, it was fun because, hey, we looking at each other, realizing we making fun of them. But it also, making fun of them became us making fun of ourselves. They think that we just can't do stuff right. They think we look weird in our dance. The reality is we making fun of their dance. So there's this weird thing going on. And they would say, well, whoever wins takes the cake. Just takes the cake. You take the cake. So you would take the cake with you. Right? Little things like that. There's another saying, I forget where they used to give another reward out for the same thing. But I'm saying all that to say is like we'll interact and we'll do things that are out of pocket and we're trying our best to get everybody to clap their hands and we're trying to figure out how to fit into a different system, not realizing that that's not even what we should be doing. We're not supposed to be doing that. We live in Master's house, and so even though a lot of our houses can even have better things than they put in the attic for us, right? We might have a better location, but we have actually better things in the field. If you ever do some research, they don't let you see these things now. But if you can still find every once in a while slave quarters, and that they keep up, and you'll discover that we used to have quilts in there, and we used to make sure that we patched up the walls, and we used to have nice painting and stuff because Master and them wasn't coming out there to check and see or whatever, because hey, they just live in the swamps, blah blah blah. So we actually had better things being separate than we might have in the house, but everybody kept telling us that the house was better than where we were. And the same as a lot of marriages. So here's the brothers who are under siege by the oppressor, and rather than saying, you know what, we should work together, we start saying whatever one brother has that we don't have makes him my enemy. And whatever I don't have, now I got to start looking at everybody, because you hear men till to this day talk like this. And women, unfortunately, because women, just like men have become emasculated, women have become hyper-masculated. Right? So, because of that switching of order that Willie Lynch did, Deuteronomy 28 still. So, now you'll see men and women who be sitting up there talking about, man, I can't trust nobody. You can't share nothing with nobody. It be your own people all the time. I can't trust, and then it becomes, I can't trust my husband. I can't trust my wife. I can't trust my children. It's gotten to the place where who do you trust? Well, I can only trust me. You got to do you. Anybody who's out there, live your best life. But what about the lives you sacrificing to live your best life? Man, you know what? It's about you. Live your best life. You only live once. All these different things come into place, and we've taken on the mindset of those who have caused us to be oppressed. And we put it up high. Right? So that's the first legal thing. If somebody talk about like for legal things, the first things first is it's difficult to have this conversation because we're so public, it's hard to talk about it privately. Right? Like even when we went over the whole thing, our second part of this whole series was making sure, and I'm gonna make sure we have a playlist up, if not today, tomorrow for certain, because we'll be finished the series tomorrow. But you can look on there for the last few videos that we've had with this particular series for the last few weeks. But if you look up, where am I at? I'm sorry. Oh, the second part of the series, it's called Protocol. even the protocol on how to become husband and wife is so foreign that when I introduce it, it's usually going to be like, oh, we can't, that's impossible for us to do. Why is it impossible for us to do? In your mind, it's impossible because how can we be without the state? Right? Because like dating, okay, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. All right, let's take sex off the table for a second. Difficult because it's so hyper infused into everything going on. But let's take sex off the table for a second. Why do you think dating is such a big deal? And I know there's very few of us, once again, that's on today. It is what it is. Right? But if somebody can holler back, like seriously, somebody give me an honest opinion. And I'll wait for this one. If it doesn't come on in a couple minutes, it is what it is. But why do you think dating is such a big deal in society? Take sex off the table. Take that everybody wants a partner on the table. I'm talking about the act of dating. That everybody has a mindset of that we talked about before. Why do you think that dating is such a big deal? It's become protocol. Why do you think dating is such a big deal that they'll have kindergarten dances and have little kindergarten dates? Why do you think it's such a big deal that they have daddy-daughter dates? Well, even though that's a very nice gesture, you can do that without calling it that. But I'm just saying, why do you think that they have to make sure they have that? How you know double OG, triple OG? Why do you think that dating is such a big deal? Now, I want you to see it's systemic. You got to figure everything that you're doing comes from a system. You said it allows for longer spaces of lack of accountability. It does, but I'm going for something more systemic or systematic. But yeah, that's very true. Keep the family and the family separate, most definitely. I'm also looking for something that's a little more systemic that you get closer to. I want you to think like how the system it's difficult because we stop thinking like how the system thinks, for sure. So, right, but you hit the system. So it's a bastardization of what the relationship you should have a job and also perpetuates capitalism. There we go. That man, okay. If you put what Sister Shirley did and then put what you just said, put it together, chat CAC, I'm with you. There we go. To be dependent on the system, right? But also to feed the system. Everything is about feeding your system. Any system, if we're in the kingdom, everything we do is supposed to feed the kingdom. If you're in China, everything that you're doing in China is supposed to make sure that China goes up, right? If you're in America, they keep talking about GDP, right? If you're in England, right, they're going or I'm sorry, not anymore. Well, they got rid of the EU, right, and all that. It did that whole separation thing, right? Like it's always about what brings you money, and who bringing you money. This is capitalism, right? We don't think about this in the kingdom. In the kingdom, somehow we believe that it's not fed. It's not supposed to be fed. We're not supposed to give anything to it. No fodder towards what's supposed to be a spiritual fire in our house. But we'll make sure that everybody else gets fed. Dating, the biggest reason why dating is there, beloved, is because you got to pay to date. And persons to show you that they're better than somebody else will take you on better dates. Matter of fact, girls, there better not be no man to come up to you. This is what nowadays is happening. There better not be no man to come up to you talking about, hey, I like you a lot. Would you like to grab a coffee? No. I need somebody to take me to, matter of fact, you can't take them to the Cheesecake Factory. That's too late. You can't take them to, maybe you can take them, I don't even know the name of all these restaurants. What's the one where they slice the meat off or whatever for you and all that stuff? Maybe you can take them to that one. I don't know. If you don't, right, don't take them on a free day. Don't take them and be like, hey, I just want to sit under the stars with you and, I'll make sure that we have plenty of food and da. But I just like to be able to talk and have time. Like, where are we going? What's this? Blah, blah, right? I'm not saying that all women are gold diggers or anything like that. What I'm saying is that that's what dating is supposed to be. That's why Valentine's Day is such a big deal. Valentine's Day is a huge deal because of the amount of money you're supposed to put into Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day, we're not even supposed to celebrate anyways because we don't have nothing to do with Cupid. It was Pan. If you know about the Pan sphere, Peter Pan, where that comes from, the little boys and stuff, you shouldn't want nothing to do with Valentine's Day anyway. Then they try to say, no, it's actually about St. Valentine's. St. Valentine's wasn't perfect either. But that's not a holy day for us. But that being said, so Valentine's Day is a huge deal. You start buying things pre-Valentine's. You start seeing things on the shelf in December and January, even though it's not until, right? Just like you see stuff on the shelf for Christmas in October, right? And September, even though it's not even, you know, like, but it's about capitalism. Once again, you feed the system. Your marriage or even your dating. So you're not even going to, they understand a lot of y'all don't even care about marriage. They kind of make marriage nothing because they allowed y'all to keep having so much things happen sexually that, who cares about marriage, right? At least what it brings. They know what sex and marriage and stuff, but they need to still get the same thing. And marriage is supposed to feed the system. So they all have you guys dating each other, dating strangers, spending money and stuff and sewing into the system. Sisters, how many times have y'all said, man, I spent all that time and all that money and all that energy and all that effort into this person and nothing happened to it because you didn't worry about a relationship, you worried about feeding the system at the moment rather than feeding yourselves and feeding into a system that feeds into you eternally. Does that make sense? Prayerfully it does. So you see what I'm saying? We're having an issue with all this stuff. So it's hard to even talk about lawful or legal or how to put this stuff together because we're still so enamored by the falsehoods of, I don't know if I have anything analogous, analogously that goes with what I'm speaking of. But we're so enamored. I used to share. We're enamored with such craziness that is designed to keep us away from each other. Because when we come together, it means that we cannot sow into the oppressor. And I'm not just talking about white. That's why I talk about nationality. Because Umar Johnson uses the same system that the oppressor does. I'm not saying Dr. Umar ain't on some real stuff. I'm not saying that he even necessarily means to, but Dr. Umar has to be capitalist in order to make what he's talking about coming to fruition. Because even if he was 100% squared away, had the school and everything together, the school belongs to the United States function. The way y'all want the school to function has to belong to the United States. It means that he doesn't work for you. If you want a school that's separate, then it means that you have to see. It's difficult. I don't know. I see you, Sister Cheryl. I'm coming right back to you. How you doing, Dominique? Welcome. See, it's difficult. If you don't have a system in place. Okay, watch this. Some of you would say, well, how does my baby go to college? Your baby can go to college if they pass a test. Your baby can go to college if they do a lot of stuff that all the other children that are doing and they're getting credits and they're getting people to write off this and that. Your baby can go to college, pass a test, and be straight. Matter of fact, we're working on, and we got to stop just working on it, but even at the last meeting we had, Sister Mignonne was telling us, she's telling me the honest truth. We were trying to develop it for years, studying, and we're getting closer and closer to having a private school. Once you got a private school, take your hands off our babies. Now you got to make sure your baby's put in the work. But there's ways to get this stuff. Like we have this belief, but even outside of that, if you have your own university, oh wait, we got an SOC university. You see what I'm saying? And even if, and by the way, I tell persons that straight up, we are not accredited, and I don't know the data we're going to try to become accredited. It's not a goal of ours. That being, in the best schools, you will find that usually, at least they used to start off as. Now they've kind of changed that. A lot of them have given up, and they just trying to get paid too. But the best schools were unaccredited because you don't have to go by somebody else's rules. You can just teach what you teach, and if somebody values what you teach, it is what it is. If they don't, it is what it is. But that being said, do you know how many places that you can go and just simply show them the degree that we will give you, and they will make sure that your baby still got the jobs and stuff, and we can still make sure they got the training. Matter of fact, we can train your babies up from young to say this is what you're going to do for our community, and if you have to get a degree in it, then we already have connections. Do you know how many persons that they went into? We got connections into the medical field. Where if somebody wanted to get a degree, we have persons that will teach them and teach them for a lot less, so that they wouldn't have to pay no hundreds of thousands, close to $1 million to be able to get their degree so that they can go ahead and open up a practice, right? or to become a nurse, or to become a nurse practitioner, a CNA, a CNT, and then that's stuff. We be able, right, to do stuff, blood work and dentists and blah blah, phlebotomists, all this stuff. We be able to do all that stuff for like maybe a couple thousand, at the most 5,000. Not because we give it. We literally are part of a business that does that, or are partners with a business that does that. If somebody were to come to me now and say, I want to become a phlebotomist, you know, but they talking about school, you got to go to school 2 years, 2 to 4 years, blah blah. No, you don't. You need 2 weeks worth of training, right? You need to be able to understand what it is as far as what is mandated across the nation. You need to be able to make sure that you can, in fact, do stick a needle in and stick it in properly at the correct angle. You need to know the difference between arteries and veins. You need to be able to pass a test. We have credentialed persons that can get you to do that 2 to 3 weeks, and then get you the literal thing that you, your certification. That's going to be nationwide, right? We have access to that, and you can do that for like $2,000 to $3,000. It might be more now, but when I was actually literally not just partnering with it, but working for them, we have access to that within ourselves. But that's easier than what they're saying, right? But we don't think that's possible or feasible, right? Like we don't think it's possible or feasible for us to feed ourselves. We forget that the Black Panther Party of self-defense is the first group that fed us. That's the first group of persons who fed us, right? And made sure that they clothed us and made sure that we could get to the hospital if we needed to. The government saw them doing that and said if they can do that for themselves, what do they need from us? They then stopped us from doing it. They then began to kill us off, and in the process of it then said, okay, hey, depend on us for that. They were bad. They were the evil ones to do it. See? Depend on us for that. Right? So that's where a lot of our marriages are having a problem, is that we're not even in a space to where we can say, hey, you know, we don't even think about that. Like these marriages, these problems that we have, you have money issues, if you have like car issues, if you're having things, what are we setting aside amongst ourselves? And then not just setting things aside only to say we got this silo of grain, so to speak, only to say we got cash for the bills to do. But what about, hey, while everybody's functioning well, let's start building places to where we have jobs for us. Right? Not even jobs, work. But you know what I'm saying? Like when we work together, let's have stuff where we have a lot more stipends. Let's make sure that we're like actually doing things to where persons are starting to have to figure out, am I going to do what I love to do, right? Or am I going to do it in the world? Because now that's what started happening with me. I had to start asking myself, you know, years ago now, I had to start saying, I keep trying to get jobs and side hustles and stuff. And every time I'm getting jobs and side hustles, I'm making less money. Because I got to take away time from what I love, and what I love to do seems to be doing more for my community. If it does more for my community, it seems like they look out for me, right? Like these are things we have to talk about, because marriage doesn't have a place to reside in. So because there's no environment, no safe place, and we're not like doing everything we can, and then when we start to get free, you know, we start talking about, let's go back to Kemet. I mean, it was better when we were making stuff with bricks. Oh, Pharaoh's now chasing us, so it's guaranteed we're going to die. Like, you should have just let us stay there. There were no graves over there. That's why you brought us out here. We start sounding kind of crazy, but we don't trust in building the system. So that's why all this stuff starts systematically. That's going to start with being born again, a gestational period of being born again, even in the mind. And coming out of the thought process that says that we have to depend on this system, the world, rather than the system we are trying to build. And really just not even, we'll build as far as by the specifications of the Most High, which is the kingdom of heaven. You said, how do we walk in the grace of Yah when a marriage fails? The space of realizing the faults and I didn't get the rest of it. But how do we walk in the grace of Yah when marriage fails? Great question. How do we walk in grace? First of all, how do we walk in grace? Right? Like that in and of itself, like how do we walk in grace? So I would say first things first. Like how does one walk in grace, right? How does one walk in grace? First of all, grace is who the Most High is, right? Remember, Kadesh is different than Kadesh. Kadesh is saying that that's the gift So the gift of who you are is your charisma. The gift of who Yah is his charisma. But the charis is the charis is actually just who the Most High is. So the charisma is who he is the gift that he's given you, basically, like that you exude, that you give. So how do we walk in him? How do we walk in charis? Number one, is the same way that we should have walked in charis when we were married, and then after we were married, before we were married, whatever the case may be. Now it's different. Now, if it's saying I've gotten a divorce and I got to still deal with this joker who doesn't walk in grace, and I won't tell anybody's story on here, but did some heinous things, let's say that, or did some jacked up things, or was abusive, or cheated with whomever, right? Or even more heinous than that, or try to turn my children against me, or my children don't even like this person, but I'm trying my best to do blah blah, and they make it easy for them. There could be a lot of different things that we start getting into, right? But first things first is walking the grace of Yah. Don't even focus on when a marriage fails. The grace of Yah is the grace. See, remember, the grace is who Yah is, and who Yah is doesn't change whether you're married, whether you're divorced, whether you're divorcing, whether you're marrying, maybe whether you're single, whether you're a couple, whether you're right. Yah's grace doesn't change due to circumstance. Who he is, because that's what his grace is. His grace is literally who it is. So when somebody says, I'm in the Most High's grace, I'm in Yah's grace, what they're saying is I'm in whose presence. A lot of us don't look at it that way, but that's what the words actually mean. So that's one of those things where it goes back to the protocol. And the protocol doesn't start just when somebody says, you know, not I do or I will. But the protocol doesn't just start when somebody says yes, right? In dating, somebody goes, right? And the other person goes, yes. It started before that. In our culture, it started before they were born. It starts when they're in the womb. It starts 0 to 3, right? 0 to 3, male to female. 4 to 6, 4 through 6, be with mama or daddy more. 7 through 9, you're their apprentice. 10 through 12, extreme education. 13 through 15, get ready to become an adult. 16 through 18, be trained on what it is to be husband and wife. 19 through 22, be trained on what it is to be mother and father. Age 22, get your inheritance and get out there and make us proud. Here it is that you will be protected and your inheritance will be used to be able to sow into your relationship that's coming up, right? To become one later on, right? Like this is, the protocol is different. So if I start there, right? Yah's grace is something that you should have been taught about a long time ago. And his grace is sufficient. Recall that, right? 3 times I sought the Lord, saith Paul. Right? I sought the Lord, and he would not take away the thorn in my side. Finally, he said, my grace, who I am, is what? Sufficient. Right? So never allow your situation to get you to never allow your situation that's challenging you to ever allow it to challenge Yah. In other words, Yah doesn't change, so his grace cannot change. So if his grace doesn't change and I have him in me, then his grace doesn't change. Now once again, this is where you got to be, it's difficult. It's easier said than done. Let's say it like that. I won't say it's difficult. Let's just say easier said than done. And I've been there, done that. Somebody do something crazy to you. Now I'm not talking about just. I'm talking about like I get close, but I've never, at least so far, I've never violated what I promised in vows and what I promised the Most High, what I promised the person who was my first wife. I've never crossed lines and told everybody outright this is what this person said, this is what this person did. My wife knows, right? A couple persons who are close to me know. Brothers and sisters that actually had to help me out and stuff like that, help me out of prison even and stuff, for things that I was accused of, never officially, but was accused of and never went to trial or anything, but still things that affected my life and things that I caused where I couldn't raise my children the way that I needed to be involved in their lives. And praise God, a lot of that hurt and a lot of that stuff was taken care of, but it's still, is not even close to what it could have been, all these different things. Um, you know, I know what it is to be in some stuff where it's found. Like, hey, we don't like each other. Like, hey, you know, two adults, if push come to shove, y'all can't make it work. That's between y'all and the Most High. And ultimately, you just might not be able to make it work. I hate that. Yeah, I hate that. But it is what it is. But I'm just saying, I do know what it is to be on some like foul. Like that's like a lot of y'all when y'all be asking, saying stuff to me, and you be saying stuff. I can tell y'all be like, oh, I'm gonna say this thing, and people freak out. I promise you, I got a story. One of these days, when I'm allowed, or if we talking in private one day, and I feel like I can trust you because you can't trust everybody with stuff. Period. Let alone you can't trust everybody with secrets. You know, not even for everybody. How you doing, brother Jacob? Uh, uh, but yeah, when I say I've been through some foul stuff, I've been through some foul, some stuff that you'd be like, oh. Okay, so that's why sometimes when y'all be telling me stuff, and y'all be like telling me, and it be crazy stuff sometimes, like you would think, and it is crazy. I'm not trying to compare. I'm just saying I be sitting there and I be like, because I'm like, okay, I'm not like belittling. I hope it doesn't come off like that, but I be sitting there because I'm like, all right, I haven't been through some of this, and they just don't know. So I'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, I've been through something like that before. Like that sounds similar, so I can hear you, and maybe that's why y'all allows us to be in positions. Because we've been through stuff that so we can hear persons rather than just be like, I can't believe it. And we just be like, oh, okay, yeah, keep on going. Right? So sometimes I look back and I'm like, nah, I think he might have had me go through this, or he works out all things together. Okay, I can see that he was trying to, he's using those things to be able to have me like hear somebody rather than just go off or tell them, well, we got to do this or dock somebody or blah blah. Like I can actually hear where somebody's coming from. And hear where they needed the help the same way I needed the help in that hurt that I was going through, that they're going through. Not everybody's pain is always the same, but I hope you get what I'm saying. All right. So, anyways, in that though, when we go through all those things, I had to learn because what I did was I did something that a lot of persons don't necessarily do. Some of us do. I actually started to get upset with the Most High Yah and started to shake my fist towards the heavens somewhere in my situation. It was like basically like, why me? Woe is me. And then I had to realize like, but I believe in Job. You know what I'm saying? Like I had to, like Holy Spirit told me that, but I had to like go, wait a minute, I believe in Job. Like that's the prison. I looked at that prison like, what did Job do? It said he was perfect and upright. So wait a minute, I can be perfect and upright, and it could mean that y'all can say because I'm perfect and upright, that y'all would use me to be able to show the devil that this ain't just about rewards, but this person will serve me because they love me. That's His grace. We don't like that. We don't like that, so we don't consider that to be His grace. But once again, if you know that the word grace really breaks down to who somebody is and being in His presence, almost. It's not the same thing, especially not in Hebrew, but it's almost like what you guys call being in somebody's aura, right? Like somebody comes in the room and there's an aura about them, a presence. That's what Yah's grace really is saying. Like when I'm in His grace, I feel His presence, I feel His warmth and everything, right? And so Yah's trying to be like, my grace, right, is sufficient. So His grace doesn't change just because your spouse has proven that they really should have never been your spouse in the first place. His character could be that as well, right? It fits into that. When Yah shows up, if His love shows up, His character shows up, right? So what happens is once again, if to be fair though, we got to talk about things once again. The way Elder Alma always says, it's a great saying that she has, it sticks in my head a lot. Well, she'll say, should have followed the law. She'll say that quite a bit. We'll be talking about something, she'll be blah blah, and one of the first things she'll say is, when it happened, they followed the law. Right, then we'll keep talking about it, but she from the jump. She just like, we talking about this and so and so. And they were following the law, they were doing what it said. And it's like, yeah, what could you say? So, unfortunately, one of the hard things that He's tough with is that we have to have an acknowledgement that for real, we did not start off lawful. Right? We're trying to make a dismount and talk about how can I make a lawful dismount from an unlawful from an unlawful leap, from an unlawful start, from an unlawful mount. Right? If you illegally start a race, the race stops. You know that, right? How you doing today, Brady? Thank you for being on. Thank y'all for the love. I appreciate you. I'm gonna say that one more again. You know, if you start a race illegally or unlawfully, right, the race stops. so, so, you know what happened? What happens is we break protocol. The Most High says this is what the protocol should be. We say, no, I'm trying to run my race. He's like, but you didn't start the race of marriage, correct? Right? But we go, no, I'm running my race. It's given not to the swift, it's to him that endure. But if you don't start the race correctly, then it's not even his race. Now here it is that we're like, well, how we're dealing with all these things that come with something. So let's be honest, a lot of us did not go through protocol to see how much does somebody believe in the word. Even if we went to church, even if they said, watch it, can we have a fair dialogue, beloved? How you doing, Sister Deborah, if I didn't say so already? Can we have like real dialogue? Let's put our teeth in this real quick. And somebody gonna be mad at me. That's okay. Ain't nobody gonna be mad but the devil. Let's have real dialogue. You ready? The most that y'all thought somebody had to do, a lot of y'all. I'm not saying that maybe you didn't know better. I'm talking about what was acceptable. Is if y'all talking about getting together, you know what people presently talking about getting together? Praise the Lord. You know, he worships. I see him crying tears when he gets before God. I hear her prayers. She's a prayer woman. She'll pray 3-4 hours a day. How many persons know that somebody can get in prayer warrior mode and they can sound like they're speaking to every demon and everybody that's around, praise the Most High, and they can do all those different things and still be a demon? If not influenced by them. Oh yeah, and that's difficult. It's difficult to hear. It's difficult to have conversations about how you doing, crowns. It's difficult to have conversation about, but real talk. You've been in some relationship to where those were demons, right? Or at least demon influenced folk. But because they said praise the Lord, I've listened to cats. I'm not telling you, I'm talking about grown men way older than I, who were older than I when they told me these stories about 15, 20 years ago. I'm telling you, straight up, telling me stories about how, and I'm not saying that they weren't sometimes, witches and warlocks. Yeah, sometimes these men were the witches and warlocks. Sometimes they were. But either way, telling me stories about how they would get with women. And how that it would start off and they would just, both sides, it seemed like it was innocent. And then they said they would talk themselves. I'm going to be adult in some of it, just a little bit of this conversation, this part of the conversation. And they would have conversations with these men and conversations with these women and be talking about stuff, and the next thing you know, they'd be speaking in code to the point to where like they literally would be talking about different ways and positions they were going to have sex by just switching the position of words they were saying and just saying praise the Lord and God bless you around. Right? Brother disappeared one time. Right? We were in the shelter. Brother disappears for like a few weeks, comes back, has a crazy look on his face, look of embarrassment. He knows, that I'm not, actually my assistant pastor at that time, maybe I can't recall, but I'm a minister. He knows we've started like a Bible study at the shelter, all this stuff at this point. We've been doing this for a minute. This man come back, brother Abraham, matter of fact. There's enough Abrahams you wouldn't know who I'm talking about. His name literally, Brother Abraham. And he comes back and just won't look me in the eye, blah, blah. And so I'm like, okay. I'm thinking, because to be honest, he was trying to come off drugs. He one of them brothers that's a functioning drug addict, and he kept one of them brothers like, no shade. Like, pretty Ricky, pretty light-skinned brother, But you wouldn't be able to tell her he had these issues, but he's going through apparently, right? So he finally opens up to me. He's like, yeah, Kofi, I went over there, and I didn't even ask him to, but he doesn't want to come to Bible study. Finally, he's like, opens up, I was going to this church and talking to this girl, and we was talking and blah, blah. I thought everything was fine. I thought everything was on the up and up. I thought everything was blah, blah. He's like, the next thing you know, we talking about this and they're talking about blah, blah. And then all of a sudden it became like I got invited to a home, and they were to do that and blah, blah. Then all of a sudden, like we went, and he's like, the first thing that we did Adults. Okay? I gave you warning. He's like, first thing we did when we got there was we had anal sex. And we did all types of oral stuff. We were rolling around. And we was doing something. I mean, we was doing stuff outside. We weren't eating Kofi. We was just home for like a week, 2 weeks. And I was like, dang. But he told me the whole thing. And it was a spiritual, it was supposed to be a spiritual connection. Started the church. And then he told me the name of the church. I haven't been given permission to say the name of the church. He told me the name of the church. As soon as he told me the name of the church, I was like, oh, they known for that. Don't nobody want to have no conversations about that. They known for that. How you doing, Minister Stephen? There's some places. I know we don't want to be honest about it. There's places where cats where witches and stuff is real. And we just, because somebody says praise the Lord, like we gotta have a standard where you make somebody go through stuff. I don't care if they've gone through it before. If they went through it before and they didn't make it through the training last time, they don't get to get in. You know, if somebody go through boot camp and they come through but they fail the boot camp training, they don't necessarily just send them home depending on what they did. They'll say, okay, if you still want to be a sailor, no problem. You start all over again. And they'll be like, but this is, I made it almost to the end. I only have 1 week left. When you want to be a sailor, you got to make it through the whole thing from beginning to end. Because if we can't trust you from beginning to end, who cares? That's why they got that battle week at the end. Battle week at the end, we got to see you stay up and get no sleep. But we got to put you through everything we trained you. But we got to see if you'll do what's there, if you'll be able to follow what we tell you, if you'll be able to follow the ranking structure that we set up amongst yourselves. You're going to have to do everything that we taught you. Because if you can't make it from beginning to end, then you're not qualified. And remember, we've been talking about that word. It's a curse word of persons. If you're not qualified, you're not of quality. And by the way, I know I've been lecturing a lot, right? But it's Q&A day. So if you have questions, comments, concerns specifically about marriage, if not, I might answer it briefly, but I'm coming right back to marriage. The Q&A, because we're finishing this up. Today and tomorrow will be Q&A to make up for me not being on yesterday. So any questions, comments, or concerns you have about marriage, if for some reason you don't have them today, let them be known tomorrow. I'm going to try to come on early tomorrow, right? I can't guarantee, but I'm going to try. You know what? Matter of fact, no try. Let me see if I can give you all the time. No try. Let's see. I will be on at 7 a.m. tomorrow. To be honest, I've been thinking about possibly just switching it to where we need to do 7 a.m. That way, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. I might have more time. I think most of you start going to work and your jobs and having to do different things throughout the day anyway. It might be best for us to just go earlier. I don't know. Maybe even eventually earlier than that. But we got so much stuff that we do, like early rising and stuff, it might mess with stuff. But I don't know. You said, why am I against polygamy? Well, I'm against anything that's not the nature of what Yah has for us. I didn't say something that's mentioned in the Bible. I said the nature of what Yah. We're not created for more than one. We're created to have two become one. Not five become one, not four become one, not three become one. And every time that it's actually happened in the Bible, if you do your research, it's actually been something, it's never been something, first of all, that Yah sanctioned. So Yah never said, I want you to have more than one wife. Right? Oftentimes, this person being put in a position where even sometimes they're tricked into having more than one wife. And if they do have more than one wife, usually it becomes a situation where it even is the downfall of a kingdom. So yeah, I'm against anything that's against Yah's will. Even Christ talks about this, right? We talked about that recently in Scripture, where where Moses is talking about divorce. It's like verses 1 through 8. Is it Luke chapter 6 or something like, I don't know. Something verses 1 through 8. So forgive me, I had to look it up. But where Christ is asked specifically. I think it's like verses 6 through 8. Where like verse 6, he's asked the question about, He says that Moses basically, that they basically, Yah never really wanted divorce or whatever. In verse 7, they say, well, then why did Moses allow for, or why did Moses command for us to write, divorce, a letter of divorce? And he says, it's because of the hardness of your heart. We actually talking about that in the series. It's because of the hardness of your heart. We did a whole thing talking about the hardness of our hearts, and then comparing it to the hardness of Pharaoh's heart, and talking about how marriage itself is worship, and you got to let people go. You got to let go of bondage to allow worship to even happen in your marriage. But a lot of persons aren't about that. You said the groom had 10 bridesmaids? Yeah. Just like it talks about Christ is married to the whole bride. The bride is supposed to be considered to be one body. It's an analogy, right? It's an idiom. It's not supposed to be considered to be an actual real thing. It's an idiom. So you're supposed to look at it as something that's not real, right? But it's supposed to be something that helps you. It's analogous. It's an analogy. It's a parable, right? That when saying that when the Son of Yah is sent back by the Father to get the body, which is supposed to be the believers, because in the spirit, Israel as one body is married to the Most High, right? And so when he comes back for his bride, it'll be like half the people. Everybody knows they're supposed to have their lamps ready, right? Everybody knows they're supposed to have something ready to light the oil on fire. Everybody knows that their oil should be ready to go and should be clean. But what will happen is many persons will not worry about it, and they'll stop thinking about it, because they'll be like, well, he hasn't come back, he hasn't come back, he hasn't come back. It's an idiom. It's not something where we say, oh, okay, Christ is literally saying that a husband is married to 10 brides. No, today it's Q&A about marriage in general. How you doing, Kevin? Today is about Q&A about marriage completely, about all the stuff we've been talking about. So yeah, it never was supposed to be taken literally, right? Even looking back, Israel, Jacob, Israel, he went looking for what? He was sent by his father and mother specifically to find a wife. When he got to where the well was, he found what? A wife. He went to her father, Laban, to see if he could have that woman's hand in marriage. For what? So he could have a wife. He worked 7 years. That was his dowry that he gave, right? To find what? To have what? A wife. Then he ended up sinning, got drunk. Laban, Leah, and Rachel apparently had been working together, possibly the whole time, or at least from when they saw they were going to be drunk, and they came up with a plan. I know we're going to go to these same places, so to forego all the stuff. It's got to be holistic. So we keep finding more and more stuff that works against it, but that's okay, right? We'll go there for a second. But he went looking for a wife. He was tricked. Then he still wanted the same wife, but also didn't want to what? Let go of the wife and be unlawful, and then not be able to get the one that he wanted, because his father was like, well, if you ain't going to take Leah, then you're not going to get Rachel. So he ends up working again. Then he still wasn't going to get what he needed, and then almost worked 7 more years. On the 6th year after even getting Rachel, he finally had to be like, all right, enough is enough. That rolled out. But he was tricked, and then had issues with that, because even though, and once again, he should have said no, but even when that stuff happened, or he ends up having more problems. What about Abraham? Abraham was never told by the Most High to have sex with Hagar. Sarah came to him and said, go ahead, the Most High says, which is that we will have a child. That can't be it. Yeah, that can't be what he meant. Look at how old we are. I'm not having children. I'm embarrassed. Go ahead and have your child. I love you. I want your stuff. It must be that the Most High. Let's go outside of his will to make what it is that we want to have. We'll change what his word is to get what we want out of it. But it caused more issues. Now Ishmael and Isaac still fighting. Right? Like we're speaking on things that are not right. Would you see Samuel's mother and the fact that she was the second of 2 wives, she couldn't have children, and then all of a sudden she's fighting against her husband and blah blah. And he's like, well, what you want out of me? I'm spending time with both of y'all. I'm giving you as much as I can to both of y'all. He's basically like, you put me in this position, but he put himself in a position too. You ain't have to have none of that. Solomon, when he had King Solomon, he has all these wives, right? All of them. When King Solomon tells us that's part of the downfall and all the beliefs that came in, especially because not being out Israel, for them to be what Israel believed. We can keep on going through, but we'll try to find a couple things here or there to be able to say, oh yeah, this is why the Most High wanted us to go ahead and get into this, that, etc., etc. Right? It's not the truth. But let's go ahead. What was it, Deuteronomy 17:17? I think I already know where we're going, but let me double check and make sure that I'm going properly. And of course, now that I need my stuff to work, it's not working. actually, I can just go ahead and turn there. Oh, here we go. Okay. It's working a little bit. Okay. Deuteronomy 17:17. We can do that. Well, let me make sure that's where you want it, right? 17:17. Okay. Neither shall he multiply wives to himself, that his heart not turn away. Neither shall he greatly multiply to himself silver. Okay. I see what you're saying. I thought you were going somewhere else. My apologies. I don't know why I had that memorized in some other scripture. Right? And it also goes a lot further. So watch this. Let's go back to verse 14 real quick. It actually says, when thou art come into the land. So watch this. When you come into the land, right? And by the way, Deuteronomy is a reiteration of the law, second law, right? So thank you for even putting that there. That's I thought you were going somewhere else. My apologies. I swear I thought there was another scripture. Right? I think it's, anyways. Deuteronomy 17:14. If we start there and then go through 17, watch this. When thou art come into the land. So when you art come where? When you get to where, this is Deuteronomy, which is the second law or the reiteration of the law. That's where the do comes from. How you doing, Money Green? Right? So watch this. Yeah. I'm with you. That's my apologies. Right? He said, when you get into the land that Yahweh Elohim promised that he would give you, and you do possess it, right? And you live therein, and you shall say, I will set a king over me, like as the nations that are about me. Right? You're going to get where they go, and you're going to get to the land that your king has given you, and you're going to say, I want kings like everybody else. Thou shalt in any wise set him king over thee, whom Yahweh Elohim shall choose. From among thy brethren shalt thou set king over thee. Thou mayest not set a stranger over thee, which is not thy brother. So watch this. He's saying already in advance, hey, I already know y'all. The Most High saying, I already know y'all. I already know that although I keep doing all these great things for you, and you've been separated now 40 years, you watched a generation die off. Moses himself is not going to be able to go with you. He's going to die off as well. All the stuff that you came out of bondage, you've seen me deliver you, and yet, guess what you're going to do? Right? Guess what you're still going to do? He said, you still going to want a king. So he said, when you do it, at least have enough sense to ask me who I choose for you. Right? And it better not be somebody that you try to present. If you just try and make a king, it better not be somebody who's a foreigner, somebody who's a stranger, somebody who doesn't follow the law, somebody who's not doing what they're supposed to, right? Right, now watch this. Verse 16. But he shall not multiply horses to himself, nor cause the people to return to Kemet, to the end that he should multiply horses. For as much as Yahweh has said unto you, ye shall henceforth return no more that way. Now remember, when we left, he put up a place literally called wall. Put up a wall in between us, but we couldn't even go back if we wanted to. Now he says, watch this, I need you to catch it. He said, if you multiply horses unto yourself, in other words, if you get a king, and this king starts putting together things and wants horses, war things, stuff like that, Kemet has horses that they go to. Right? Kemet has all these things. So you got to get back in bed with them. Or somebody might be trying to put themselves in a place to where they're just like Pharaoh was in front of you. He said, if you get this king and he starts trying to do things for him rather than him representing me, he's still supposed to take care of his people. He'll still don't let him do what you just got out. You just came away from Pharaoh. Remember, I just got rid of Pharaoh's chariots. Pharaoh multiplies horses, but when he multiplies them unto himself. Right? He said that he multiplies them unto himself. And so he said, be careful when you see persons multiplying these horses or trying to get things together, or trying to become the most powerful war person, understand that's for them. That's not for you. And if anything, if they lead you anywhere, they're trying to lead you back to a time of Kemet, if not take you back there to be and change themselves. Because if they're multiplying horses to themselves, what's to stop them from saying, hey, you remember you had us as slaves? Why not take the slaves back? We'll give you some of them. Just let me keep enough to keep an army for myself, and we'll still have enough to kind of take over Canaan and stuff, but you can have your slaves back. Just give up more horses. He said, be careful who you're in a relationship with, right? Be careful what they're building. Like a lot of persons now, they build themselves for money. And yes, we do need money, but be careful with somebody who's like, hey, I'm going to just keep building millions and millions and millions for myself. myself and have nothing to show for it. There's a lot of churches that are in that have millions of dollars, and the most they have to show for it. Oh yeah, well we have a school for the babies. Yeah, we have a place where people do camp. Yeah, we do have a gym and everything, but anybody can come into the gym and anybody can work out and blah blah. But meanwhile, like we can't eat food. Meanwhile, we're still getting divorces. Meanwhile, instead of making sure that men have inheritance, and when they find wives, that there can be a place for their husbands and wives to attach themselves to, that they might be able to get help from their community. Right. Meanwhile, by making sure that we start businesses where the only persons who are getting hired are persons from within, rather than starting businesses but then saying we'll hire whoever the best is, whether they believe what we believe or not. No, they don't do that anywhere else. In the Roman Catholic Church, you think that they're hiring Muslims to come in, and be priests? You think they're hiring Buddhist women to come in and be nuns? You think that they're firing nuns that are teachers so they can make sure that the best Protestant teachers can come in and have a job? No, you make sure, right, that you make sure that you have something that's building up for your community, right? All right, now verse 17, neither shall he multiply wives to himself. So even that scripture, which we should take as all men, but even that scripture is talking about when you choose this king, be careful about the king. And by the way, so Moses is already telling us in advance, hey, be careful when you get free. I know y'all, the Most High knows y'all gonna try to get a king, y'all gonna try to build up these war chariots, y'all gonna try to build, y'all gonna try, he's already telling them, y'all gonna try and get a king that's gonna build up wives for himself and stuff like that. You're gonna try and build up horses for himself. It's gonna be about him and not you. Verse 17, neither shall he multiply wives to himself, that his heart turn not away. See, King Solomon's problem, King Solomon's problem is not that he is not that he lost wisdom. He was still the wisest man to ever live. But how many persons know you can be wise but then used for evil? That's when it gets really difficult. We have a lot of really wise men who are ultimately fools because they're wise, but they're dedicated to evil. We have a lot of wise women who are the wisest persons that you'll ever meet, but they're dedicated to evil. Do you hear me? Right? It says, neither shall he multiply wives to himself, that his heart turn not away. See, the more wives he multiplies to himself, what happens? And thank you for the person who brought the scripture. I swear I thought you were going somewhere else, but my apologies. I think it was Gardia. I believe it was you. Thank you so much. Right? Do you hear what it's saying? It's telling you that not only multiply horses, multiply this, but if you find a king and this person, once again, somebody with some bread. So somebody with some bread, and now all these women are attracted, and you're like, man, sure, I can take care of this. I can take care of that. One matter of fact, I ain't even going to take care of y'all unless y'all willing to be one of the ones in the harem. Right now, I don't even have wives. I got the main wife. I got the second wife. I got I got it set up just like Pharaoh. Go study, if you've never done some research, study on how Pharaoh's wives system worked. He had the one wife that everybody else was like, that's his wife. But then he had like, I think he had like one or two, I think it was two, that would be under her. And they were the ones that were ready, basically, he would choose one of those if something happened to his wife, right? Or if his wife ever did something crazy. Then, after that, you had like 10 of them that were in training to become the next two or something. And then after that, you had like 100 of them that basically would just, he choose you, have sex with you. He might only see you one time your entire life, never see you again. But he just, he see you, he says, hey, make her one of the 100. He goes ahead, has sex with you, and then that's it. And then after that, he could see any woman that's walking around and just be like, yo, make her whatever. Like that's how it did. And so all these persons that be acting like, look, the more wives that you have, that you multiply into yourself, guess what happens? The more your heart turns away. Our heart's supposed to be about the Most High. The Most High has one wife. Now I know somebody said, there's multiple persons, and blah, blah. You're not catching, first of all, we're talking about spirit and not flesh. Right? The spiritual man is going to work different than the flesh man. Right? So That's why we can all be part of the same body in the spirit. But I better not be part of nobody except my wife's body in the flesh. Come on, we smart enough to catch. And if not, let's smarten ourselves up a little bit. Let's put those thinking caps on. Right? Right? You see what I'm saying? Let's use the soul, the psychology, to put the spirit and the flesh together so that it makes sense. You understand how this works? Right? There's somebody trying to get out of it. We're trying to do all this extra to figure out a way to make our flesh please, rather than have our spirit in subjection to the flesh. Rather, our spirit through the soul have the flesh in subjection to the spirit. Right? But that being said, verse 17, Deuteronomy 17:17, neither shall he multiply wives to himself, that his heart turn not away, neither shall he greatly multiply to himself silver and gold. So anybody who you meet, any brothers are making money, and by the way, sisters do the same thing. But this is focusing on men. We're focusing on kings. The Most High said, I'm going to get you guys to freedom. I'm going to get you guys to separate. I'm going to get you guys to be holy. I'm going to get you guys to be sanctified. I'm going to take a whole generation, 40 years, to ensure that you guys are only coming up with truth and knowledge and intimacy with me. How you doing, big brother Thomas? He said, I'm going to do all those things. He said, but I'm going to give you prophecy through my servant Moses. And I'm going to let you know that you guys are going to want a king. So be careful when you get a king, because when you get a king, you're used to Pharaoh. So you're going to want a king that's a foreigner. Does that make sense? See, our marriages are under this umbrella. Your marriage is influenced by this. You want kings that are foreign. So guess what you want? You want somebody to marry that's foreign to what you believe. Oh, I know you don't want to hear that. You like kings that are foreign because you were under foreign rule. You were under a foreign oppressor. You were under somebody that didn't believe what you believed. Right? So you keep talking about that you saved, that you sanctified, that you filled with the Holy Ghost, but you still exist under foreign rule. And thank y'all for the love, appreciate it, right? Like, you're still under foreign rule. So how are you going to be in the kingdom, but under foreign rule? He said you guys are going to get free and get exactly what y'all promised you. And when you get there, he said you're going to desire to have kings, families, government, empires set up the way the world does. He said, so when you do, he said, at least don't get somebody foreign to what I've literally spent 40 years cleaning off of you. And at least consult me. That's what the Most High said. At least can you do me a solid, consult me. I have protocol, I have order, I have structure. And he says, and don't allow your kings, don't allow your husband, don't allow your wife to be somebody who multiplies horses, who's always ready for battle, who's always talking about how somebody else, who's always talking about what somebody else does, somebody else teaches, somebody else wants, what somebody else forgives, what somebody blah, blah. Be careful. Be careful. Not only that, be careful that this person doesn't multiply wives. Or in some cases, husbands. You know, now it's very green for everybody. Why can't I have as many side dudes as I want? Some guys be out there now, it's a thing that's put on social media all the time. Guys be like, I don't know what y'all talking about. I don't want to be no person. I'm a side dude. Right? I don't take nothing from somebody. Her husband take care of that. Her man take care of that. I be getting upset. They be joking, but it's not joking. They be sitting up there, seriously, we adults up here, right? Ain't nobody gonna tell me that you ain't seen that. It can be generalized. What part? I'm sorry. Foreign. Okay, foreign ruler and shepherd that preaches false doctrines. Foreign. So when we talk about foreign, foreign as far as false shepherd, somebody who's outside of the kingdom. Outside of Israel, Israel's supposed to be kingdom. If you're Israel by birth or grafted in, etc. Ultimately, you got to follow the law, right? So this is what happens is we have persons who are trying to bring in foreign sensibilities, right? So they're foreigners. We have persons who are telling us Christianity is more important than the doctrine of Yah. How you doing, Jay? We got a problem. Real talk. And we have, right, like the doctrine, Torah. Doctrine means Torah. Look, doctrine means Torah. Torah, doctrine also means instruction. Persons are giving us instruction that are not Yah's Torah, or Yah's doctrine. So yeah, so anybody. And by the way, and your marriage is supposed to be based off of Yah's doctrine. That also means that his doctrine says your marriage is to have a place for it that is something that his doctrine can live inside of. So, we can put as many cactus seeds in Antarctica as we like. At some point we gotta recognize they're not gonna grow. We can put, you know what I'm saying? We can do that all day. We can put plants that are supposed to be grown in caves in the hottest places in the Sahara Desert and keep waiting for them to grow. But at some point, we got to recognize we're probably not going to get what we're, you know what I'm saying? We can put fish that are really strong, that are the strongest of swimmers. We can put mammals that are in the ocean because they breathe in the air. But take a mammal and put it on the ground, his body starts to get crushed because it's designed literally to be in the water. It cannot survive. So we keep trying to put his word and trying to put marriage inside of the institution that he wants to be put inside of the kingdom of heaven, and we keep trying to put it everywhere else because they were surprised. We keep acting surprised that it doesn't flourish. So yeah, so the man who multiplies wives into himself, it says that his heart will turn away. Right? By the way, like that's a very in-depth. That's a very in-depth thing. That forgive me, y'all's garden. I don't know why guard y'all. That's a very deep thought process that the more wives, because I don't think persons catch that. It doesn't just say that the more wives you have, the more your heart will turn away from the wives. It says the more that you allow a man to multiply wives into himself. Now we should multiply wives as far as we should make sure that we are constantly having marriage. That's part of having the kingdom come together. That's part of the community. But it says the more wives a man multiplies to himself, and also that's also talking about not lifting up marriage to the Most High, but just to ourselves, praising ourselves. It says his heart, his passion turns away. Turns away from who? The Most High. So the more wives that one has, see, Yah has it set up. Where look, remember, why did Yah even give Adam a wife? First of all, Adam had to agree with the Most High that he needed a such thing. Adam could have lived forever by himself. Right? Adam means man. And Adam is the one who would call himself husband and say, for this cause will a husband leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife. So Adam, if we keep it in the buck, right? You hear me, beloved? Adam, if we keep it in the buck, I hope somebody catches this now. Adam, if we're going to keep this a buck, is, how can I say this? Adam is the first. I hope I'm saying this right. Yeah, so Adam being the first, we should take this from, sorry, I'm praying and saying at the same time, I'm trying to get it for real. So Adam, he's given a wife because he has an agreement with Yah. He does the will of Yah. He has his power. He's over the animals. He's dressing the garden. He's keeping the garden, right? He's authorizing things to move. He has abilities that are unlike any other. He's perfect in all his ways. He's strong. He cannot get sick, right? Everything he does is perfect. Anything that he does aligns with God perfectly because there's no sin. There's no missing the mark. There's none of that exists yet. He's been given an opportunity to miss the mark. He's been given an opportunity to eat of the tree of life. He hasn't eaten of either one yet, so he's straight, right? In his work, he realized the necessity of a wife. And realizes that it's not righteous for him to be alone, right? He agrees with Yah, and then Yah puts him to sleep and gives him a wife. He wakes up and he becomes husband and wife with her, right? And then eventually down the road they have children. Unfortunately, the children were had under imperfect circumstances because they had sinned by that, right? So Adam and Eve, if you will, they're really Adam and Ayazar, but what we call today Adam and Eve. They are one, and Adam knows the necessity of Eve, and he could have chosen to stay by himself. And when he saw the animals and that they had helpmates, and he knew that he was supposed to be fruitful, multiply in order to replenish and subdue, right? He realized that he's not going to do that within himself. So when he saw somebody who was of him, who he become one with, and therefore go back to being one with, he said, "Oh wow, that's worthy of for this cause, speaking upon every man that comes after me, that they'll leave their mother and father and cleave to their wife." So this is what he says. This is what was mandated, right? By Adam, not even by the Most High. The Most High um, gave Adam assignments, and through Adam's assignments, he agreed with the will of the Most High, and then Adam spoke it. And if Adam spoke it, it's as if the Most High spoke it at that point, because they were speaking the same language, they were doing the same thing, they were thinking along the same frequency, if you will, right? We like to talk about that frequency. So that's they were speaking, thinking along the same frequency. All right. So that being said, those things. That's how important it was for the oneness and the system of stuff. Once they sin, once Adam and Eve enter into sin, that's the first time that Yah says, and Yah can see all, but he says, "Adam, where art thou?" And I know that person now trying to say there were different gods and no, that's foolishness. The same Elohim is the one that said who created him from the dust of the ground, who made a wife and had them two become together. Is also the same Elohim that says, "Adam, where art thou? I cannot find you. Where are you?" In other words, what I created, what I had a relationship with, and what I was in perfect harmony with, doesn't exist. Where are you? What happened to you? Right? Where are you? I don't see. This can't be you. Where are you? Right? So I need right, but that was the importance of the oneness. Right? He loved Adam enough to know that he made Adam to be his spiritual bride. Right? And he understood that although Adam had Yah's spirit, that Adam would never be able to experience true, truly, like what it was to be like his spiritual bride, or if you want to talk about his spiritual father or his physical father, even whatever, right? Not really physically, because Yah's not a physical person. But that being said, you want to talk about the spiritual, like he's the one that made him from the dust of the ground and all that stuff, and then breathed into him, and the spirit and the dust became a living soul together with the breath that was the soul, all that stuff. He understood that, hey, the same way that I expand and I create, and I'm able to look at my creation and things like that, and I multiply, and it's part of who I am, Adam will never be able to be who he's supposed to be if he won't be able to become one with somebody, right? That oneness causes multiplication, but become one with one person. So Yas basically says, Adam, I'll allow you to become one with someone. But that oneness allows you to multiply, so you'll still be able to have different relationships, you'll still be able to talk to different persons, right? You'll still be able to deal with family members. By the way, there were other human beings around, right? Before Adam and during the time of Adam and Eve and stuff like that. That being said, though, I don't want to get too deep into that, right? Because I'll lose something if I go too much deeper into that. That being said, he says, I want you to have oneness. That oneness will cause you to be able to be even more one with me, because you'll understand what it is that I'm doing, what I go through, and what happens, and what it is to even be over creation, to see creation do things, to be proud of creation, things of that nature, and to allow creation to have that choice, that free will. Right? We talked about it. We have it recorded somewhere, but it's a long time ago that we really talked about it. So maybe I don't even think we did it in the Genesis series this time. We might have to go. You might have to go to the old Genesis series if that's still a thing. We might have to, yeah, but I might have discussed it a tiny bit in about a shot. But yeah, I don't shy away from that belief system. It's just something that doesn't always come up that much. But yeah, I mean, the Bible makes it very clear. Cain, when he, first of all, there's no writings, there's no extra books that say that Adam and Eve had a daughter. Now, somebody can say, well, women weren't always mentioned, and blah, blah, and sons are mentioned. But we're talking about, generations, and this person begot, who begot, who begot, who begot, for certain. But if somebody has a daughter, especially if somebody has, their daughters are mentioned quite regularly, quite often in the Word of God, and talked about, whether it be, I could go through a list of it. We're talking about lot stars, we're talking about the daughter that was, I'm forgetting of the guy who ended up sacrificing his daughter because of his own words that he said, and so he felt like he could keep his word. Or we're talking about, the two daughters, or I said Lot, or we're talking about Naamah, even, like we know Noah's wife's name, But we do this weird thing where it's like the Bible's misogynistic. But the Bible doesn't mention daughters, namely because, especially if we're talking about Adam and Eve, the beginning of all creation, why we not getting know their daughters. But when we have to recognize that they were actually human beings that were around. They were not of Adam's lineage. This is why Moses even has a statement that he makes. Well, really, he's making it in Genesis, right? When he's writing about a shop, but he makes it a point to say that Isaiah, who we call Eve, is the mother of all. The mother of all, right? He's saying that because basically, if you look at the flood, after the flood, right, who is the lineage of who made it through the flood? The lineage is from Adam through Seth, right, through Enoch, through Methuselah, through Lamech, to Noah, right? So he's saying that if you're going to talk about a bloodline, the only bloodline that even counts is that's ultimately what he's telling you. But there were, Cain, when he married somebody, and then he even talks about cities that exist, outside of what Adam and Eve, because Adam and Eve were focused on the garden. They were given this huge place, and not just the garden. We have Eden. Eden is even bigger, but they had this huge place called the Garden of Eden, right? That nobody was allowed in except them, and everybody was going to be for that particular family. They were the heads of everything that was happening, and as they went up, everybody went up. As they fell down, everybody fell down, right? So that's one of the things that aren't talked about. We always talk about the daughters of the children of Adam versus and the children of Seth versus the children of Enoch, where you hear like the children of Most High, but the children of Heaven. But nobody talks about the fact that there's a lot of persons that existed that were not children of the Most High, nor intended to be. And so what's happened, like I don't think persons have done a little bit of research. I won't go too, like I said, I don't want to get too deep into about marriage today. But even if you look like, here's a little something for you to think about. Have you ever thought about all these beings, like for example, remember Neanderthals, and Neanderthals had to have sloped foreheads, and they had to be black folk, and they had to be cavemen, they had to be this, they had to be that. And then finally they had to start getting honest and being like, no, Neanderthals are actually the only people that carry Neanderthal DNA are so-called white persons, Europeans. And those Europeans, then all of a sudden they were like, oh, well if they're Europeans, then maybe they weren't stupid, they weren't dumb, blah, blah, right? And it's like, yeah, they weren't, like, human beings are human beings. There were different families of them. There were different communities, there were different things that existed, and it's possible that they could come together and that they could have relationships, sure, right? But, like a lot of them, they say, what happened to this? What happened to all these different groups? Well, the flood happened, and there's one group that made it through afterwards, and they didn't have to have hair on them, or they didn't have to be slouched, they do all this weird stuff where they try to like, and a lot of times they've been caught even, because I don't think a lot of persons even look at paleontology correctly. So they don't actually ask themselves like, where are complete skeletons of a lot of these creatures? And the reality is they don't have complete skeletons. They'll find a tooth, or they'll find like a skull, and they'll say, oh, well, the skull is an interesting position. The shoulders must have been backwards when they walked. You don't know where the shoulders are. Or they'll find hips or something, and then in a pile of bones in a whole huge area, they say, I think these hips went with this head. And they keep telling us all these different things. So the reality, though, is that the bloodline matters from Adam, because the first Adam is leading us to the second Adam. Ultimately, that's the two main persons in our bloodline we need to be thinking about. And the first Adam leads to the second Adam, right? So that first Adam, husband to Eve, leads to the second Adam, husband to Israel. And we're supposed to focus on them because ultimately, out of any other bloodline, who exists? Maybe you can say there's some semblances of them, and that's why maybe you have some DNA left in you that you can say, oh, okay, it traces this and that or whatever. Like maybe there was intermarriage and stuff like that, because we don't know 100% where Shem, Ham, and Japheth's wives come from, right? We don't know for sure where Namach, Noah's wife, comes from. We don't know. And as much as everybody wants this to be the case, there really is no evidence that the Most High is having brothers and sisters. Even back then, we really don't have anything for brothers and sisters married. We might have closest as cousins, and I don't even I think we overemphasize that. Like as far as first cousins don't really happen or anything like that. But you know, even with Noah and then they were having children, I'm sorry, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and they're having children after the flood. Everything, we don't know exactly how everybody even intermarried and stuff, but how many, you know, third, fourth, fifth, and stuff had to happen. We don't know 100%, but we do know that marriage between brother and sister is not a thing. So even in Adam and Eve, when somebody goes, "Oh yeah, they just married brother and sister," no, when did the Most High allow that? The only reason people even think that He allowed that is because of Abraham and Sarah, before they even met the Pharaoh that they lied to. They came into agreement because Sarah was so beautiful. Abraham was kind of like a little weak-minded in this regard, to be fair. He was like, "Hey, can we make a pact? If we ever come across somebody and they powerful and they're gonna try to take me because they want you," this person did that in his day. He was like, "Can we just make a pact that we'll just pretend that I'm your brother, and then that way, if they do take you, you know, hey, I'll have to live with the fact that they haven't sex with my wife, and then maybe we'll get away one day." But it, you know, and rather than believing that y'all will protect him, he was just like, "Well, if they do take you, you know." And remember, before he came into the knowledge of who y'all was, remember what he was dealing with. Now he was dealing with his father. His father was way out there now. So even Abraham, once again, you were talking about we had to correct some things that are in our lineage. But yeah, there's a different conversation. Yeah, and Messiah comes from the sin of Adam, right? He came for the sin of Adam, not for the sin of everybody else, right? But he came through that lineage or whatever. Everybody else, by the way, made a pact with the enemy anyway. So everybody who decided to be with the enemy, they died off in the flood. But anyway, I already went too deep into it. I'm sorry. I probably lost some of y'all. That's okay. At some point, we'll try to go into a little deeper. Great question. But yeah, so as far as marriage is concerned, we just have to recognize we don't really have a place to put, we don't really have a place to talk about it, to speak about it, to live it through. Like for real, we don't even have a place to really talk about it, to speak about it, to live it through. You know? So if somebody wants to be married and keep up with these things legally, lawfully, including even getting a divorce, because getting a divorce, everybody thinks about divorce as far as I'm going to go to court, I'm going to do this. You can deal with that stuff privately. And if you sign private contracts and stuff like that, and if you're in a community where you're private contracts, so watch this. See, here's another thing too. It's going to be tough because this is what we talk. We use these terms that we don't want to hear. Obedience is better than sacrifice. And if you listen, baby, it's 11:11. Right. If I may, sorry, y'all pause for a second. Excuse me. Uh-oh, I forgot. What was I saying? What was I saying? Oh, no. How you doing, big dog? But that's not, I mean, I wasn't going to say that, but I was going to say something else. I saw it was 11:11. I'm saying that, and then, hey, how you doing, Tanisha? Shalom. Shalom, shalom, shalom. Peace, peace, peace. Something, oh, man. I was getting ready to say something. What was I going to say? I lost it that fast. I'm sorry, y'all. Does anybody recall the last thing I was saying before we paused? Or before I stopped speaking? Adam, Eve, okay, I said enough. We'll get to it another time. That being said, we're getting back to marriage. Okay, my apologies. There was something, it's like right there. Maybe it's for tomorrow. We'll be doing this tomorrow again anyway, but there's still a little bit of time. We go a little bit longer. Audience is, I'm going to try and come on 30 minutes earlier tomorrow since we got to stop at 10 a.m. New York time for the podcast. But, so I will try. I will be on early tomorrow. So feel free to join us so we can make sure we have Q&A and do one last Q&A and do it well for part 2 of the Q&A for the series and finish up strong. And then on Sunday, we'll be back in our Exodus series. But I was saying something. Okay. Maybe it's not for today. But yeah, so if we get these environments together, we'll have a place. Right now, it's difficult for us. Oh yeah, okay. I was talking about divorce, right? And we were talking about divorce. How do you have a place? Because oh yeah, if you have stuff, okay, obedience is better than sacrifice. We talk about that, but it's not. We don't really believe it because in order for this stuff to work, we would have to give the same right, if not more, for our own people to make decisions about our marriage. And I'm talking about those in the kingdom, right? Hear me. Those in the kingdom need to have more right than anybody else to speak about our marriage. Can I say that again? And it's going to be something where this is the difficult part, but we keep talking about all this stuff and obedience and sacrifice. No, if obedience is better than sacrifice, I'm telling you, my brother, I'm telling you, my sister, our people are going to have more right to speak on our marriage than everybody else does. Right? So you have to say, so you have to be willing to go. See, and this is why once again, it has to start righteously, or and if it didn't start righteously, that's what we have to establish or reestablish. We have to establish, reestablish. We've got to redo this thing, right? Or that we're putting the institution of marriage in because it's not working properly. How you doing, Blue Flowers? Right? We have to get to a place where we reestablish what the kingdom says. So, in the kingdom, we don't have any foreign. Remember, we just talked about the importance of foreign. In the kingdom, we do not have any foreigners, any foreign belief system, any foreign ways, right? How you doing, Deezy? In the kingdom, we do not have foreign ways. You get to tell us what the Most High has for us. Hey, how you doing, 404? Right? Why am I tripping? 404 is ATL, right? That was a long time for me in my head. I know 404. Right? You hear what I'm saying though? Like if you want your marriage to work, it means that your people have to have. No, I know for sure it's Atlanta. I dial 404 stuff just about every day. I was like, sometimes they're tripping. I was like, why am I tripping over 404? Like that's like me tripping over 202. Grow up in the DMV, don't know 202, 301, 703. That's like growing up in Hawaii, you don't know 808. It's crazy. Anyways, how you gonna be in Honolulu and nobody you don't know what 808 is? I'm tripping. Anyways, but yeah, so you have to have a belief, you have to have a thought process. You have to have a correct mentality where you understand what's going on and it has to come into fruition. We don't have that set up. So we're gonna have to literally start to give more power. Now we gotta learn before we just say, and I don't know if I say give more power, because you can be obedient and still have power. Power comes through your obedience too. More power comes with obedience. But you have to figure out obedience and you have to know the word. You have to know how this works so that you stop looking to persons who are outside of the word. Now this is what's happened because of enslavement, this is what's happened because of loss of self, this is what's happened because you believe that there's such thing as the United States citizenship. Like you believe the United States is an actual country, you believe the United States wasn't stolen from somebody, you believe that an American is not a copper-colored person indigenous to the Americans, you believe all those things. And by the way, I'm even going to stop saying that word. I've been thinking about this for like a few years, especially now. I'm not going to even use the word indigenous as much because the word indigenous is actually when something that somebody would use to be against the person who's native. So I'm not even going to really use that word. You are who you are. Remember that too. Like even in just law, I know we're in the era of birth certificates, so we forget this, but it never mattered that much of where you come from. It mattered who you came from. So I'm gonna stop worrying about calling you indigenous, because indigenous, they would see somebody's called indigenous because that's their way of saying, I know you're originally Australian, but I don't want to call you Australian. I don't like you. I don't like the fact that you're a threat to what I can own. So I'll call you indigenous. I don't think that they'll give. I'm gonna look up a couple definitions real quick. Yeah, see, they changed it, but that's not the. Yeah, I'm gonna have to hold on. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do some research of which place to go get the definition from. Because I'm not gonna find it right now. And now it's not even trying to show me any definition. Wow, that's crazy. Yeah. But I know in Black's Law definition, right? In Black's Law definition, well, Aboriginal definitely. Aboriginal you want to be careful of because anything that has for the most part, anything that has an A in the beginning of it is the opposite of. If it's ab, it's supposed to be something that is the opposite or even can be abused, right? It's abused. It's like if something's abnormal, it's abusing the normal, right? Is it right? If it's abhorrent, it's abusive of the horns. you so aboriginal is something that you can abuse the original with somebody worthy of abuse, or the opposite. But yeah, so like there's not really a Black's Law dictionary definition for indigenous, which should always tell you something. They'll tell you something, but they won't define it by law, right? So privately, maybe we should use amongst ourselves Aboriginal or indigenous, or in a private thought process, we could be talking with others and be thinking about that. But we should never think legally we're looking for the indigenous, because the indigenous don't really have legal, thought process. They're not really protected, at least not in the West, right? But if you're talking about Aboriginal, right? But even with that, they're trying to tell you it's Aboriginal title. So if it's Aboriginal title, right? If you break down the word Aboriginal, if we break down Aboriginal, I think in Black's Law Dictionary, Aboriginal basically means like it's supposed to talk about how you have exclusive rights. But in order to have the exclusive rights, you're supposed to do it ab-original, not original. Because if it's just your rights, it should be original rights. But if it's ab-original, then they're saying we're not talking about original rights. Because if you're talking about just giving somebody original rights to land that was originally theirs, then you should have no say over it. There doesn't need to be a treaty, just leave. Right? So it gets into these deep places. But that being said, they do the same thing with us. Like, we're not looking at original marriage, right? We're not looking at original marriage. We're looking at aboriginal. Somebody else is coming into what y'all already said, what he's already declared. What used to be a standard, what we used to live, what nobody used to say anything about. There was no second thought about it. We didn't have any, there was no such thing as we need to have these long conversations and dissertations and this and that. And what if somebody disagrees with that? And what if somebody wants to have 15 husbands? And what if somebody wants to have 25 wives? And what if somebody wants to do this? And it's like that's somebody bringing some aboriginal. That's not original. That's not our way of thought process. Anybody having discussions like that is somebody who's anti-Christ. Anybody who says, I want more than one wife, and Christ already told you that the only reason that was even allowed, divorce was even allowed, was because of the hardness of your heart. Because if you didn't sin against your wife, then you wouldn't need to write a letter of divorce. If your wife wouldn't sin against you, there'd be no reason for that. But the only reason why sin can exist is because of the hardness of your heart. So if you're still trying to fight for something that the Most High says, hey, get your heart together, man, and Christ himself preached it, then you're anti-Christ. That's original. But somebody else wants you to believe in that aboriginal stuff. That's when it becomes problematic. All right. So that's Q&A for today. I promise you I'll be on early tomorrow, 7:30 a.m. New York time, right at this spot. I'll send out another message. We're supposed to have another meeting with those who are in the DMV / Baltimore / in between. So we're supposed to have another meeting on Monday. The meetings that we were supposed to have yesterday evening, they had to be moved to today. I'm sorry, they had to be moved to next week. So Thursday, 6:30 p.m. New York time, ministerial staff meeting. Thursday, 9 p.m. New York time, we'll have a meeting with all SOC. Those who are in the DMV, Baltimore, in between looking at meeting up with us, we'll meet with you guys on Zoom on Monday. All right? So I appreciate y'all. Thank you for hanging in there. I'm trying my best to get this stuff together. Just had too much going on. Wasn't feeling that well, but to be honest, it wasn't necessarily that. But I just had too much going on. I had to make sure certain things were done for the family. Had to make sure we had some stuff. We had to get some things together, get some resources, and it just was gonna be too much if I was gonna be proper. I was either going like half do the teaching, or half do the stuff for the family, and neither one of you deserve it, and the family got to come first. So just had to make sure some things are in order. Pray for me. I'm trying to make sure things are finished up today, and then that should be at least at least for a little bit. We should be fine with things. Pray for us. Pray for travels and all that stuff. And thank you for you guys' help in many different areas. Those of you who know what I'm talking about, and all the ways that you help us and things to help with what we're doing. Thank you again to everybody. I believe once again tonight is a women's meeting, which should be with Elder Alma at 7 p.m. New York time. And I'll be back in front of you guys 8 p.m. New York time. Actually, we're going to speak tonight on how everybody is turning on MLK. And while I love me Malcolm X, and I tell you I identify with the more persons who are turning on MLK, a lot of us young cats don't know no better, but a lot of the old heads and stuff like that is interesting because how easy it's going to be to rebuff a lot of stuff and show how a lot of persons didn't care nothing about it. And just persons sometimes won't open up a book or just literally do some quick research to figure out what MLK was about. But we'll talk about that this evening. We'll have Q&A part 2 for this, for the marriage stuff tomorrow, 7:30 a.m. New York time until 10, and then 10, Elder Anais will have the word ready for us, 11 a.m. New York time, Shabbat school for the babies, and then prayerfully you enjoy your Shabbat. And then we'll see y'all on Sunday and Monday, and then Tuesday and Wednesday I'll take off, and we'll continue to do what we do. All right, but thank you all. I appreciate you. Much love to you. I've been trying my best to get to everybody as much as I can. I know I'm behind on certain persons. We've been trying to get paperwork and stuff out. Certain persons that we asked for certain things we still didn't get from you. But I'm going to just take my best guess on it. I don't like to do that, but I'm going to take my best guess on some of the stuff before I send it out. Be careful with all the stuff that's out here, the lettuce stuff, what is it, the lettuce stuff, the jalapeno stuff, all these sicknesses coming from all this different stuff that's out here. Just be careful, watch yourselves, eat as clean as you can, I guess, and take care of yourselves, take care of your family. So I'll see you guys. Brothers, don't forget, homework assignment coming up, not tomorrow, but the following Saturday. Don't forget we have a homework assignment that we're supposed to make sure that we're ready for. So prayerfully you're getting yourself ready, and prayerfully you're ready. All right, that's all that I got today. Thank you again. We give our honor and praise once again to the Most High. We give praise and honor to Him for my wife, the Honorable Alma, who lives a life that's able to be honored. To the ministerial staff, moderators, SOC, Lottie Dottie, everybody, we appreciate you very much. Continue to stand strong in what y'all has for you. And until the next time we have a chance to be in front. I'm sorry. I don't know if I did that correctly. We give our honor and praise to the Most High. We give praise and honor to Him for my wife, the Honorable Alma. Thank you, everybody, for being on. And remember, as always, that you are loved, you're necessary, you're majestic, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be up. Shalom, take care. If I don't see you before this evening, or I don't see you this evening or before tomorrow, early Shabbat Shalom to you.